Hey there, Night Wanderers. Tonight we're descending into depths that haven't seen daylight in millennia. We're talking about a discovery so profound, so unsettling, that it rewrites everything we thought we knew about human civilization. Before we begin our journey into the dark, take a moment to like this video if you enjoyed drifting off to mysteries wrapped in history. Subscribe if you want more stories that blur the line between the possible and the impossible. And drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, get comfortable, pull those blankets up, dim those lights, maybe turn on a fan for that perfect background hum. Tonight's story starts with a crack in the floor of a monastery and ends with questions that will outlive us all. Picture this. It's 2019, and you're standing in the basement of a Benedictine monastery in central France. The building itself has stood for 800 years, its stones worn smooth by the passage of countless feet, countless prayers, countless seasons. You're Dr. Sarah Chen, a structural engineer hired to assess damage after unusual settling in the foundation. The monks are worried. They've noticed cracks spreading through the chapel floor, small at first but growing. They fear their ancient home is finally succumbing to age. You're on your knees, running your hands along a fissure in the flagstone floor, when your fingers detect something wrong. The crack shouldn't be here. The stone beneath should be solid bedrock, but instead, there's a hollow sound when you tap. You pull out your ground-penetrating radar equipment, more out of professional curiosity than real concern. The screen flickers to life, and what you see makes your breath catch in your throat. The radar shows an enormous void beneath the monastery. Not a natural cave, but something else. Something with straight edges and regular patterns. Something that speaks of human hands and deliberate construction. You show the readout to Father Michel, the elderly monk who's been your guide through the monastery's labyrinthine passages. His face goes pale. He tells you something he's never shared with anyone outside the order. The monastery, he explains, wasn't built here by accident. 9 centuries ago, when the first monks arrived to establish their sanctuary, they found ruins, ancient ruins, already so old that local legends had forgotten their origin. The monks built over them, incorporating what they could into their foundations, sealing away what they couldn't understand. They kept this secret, passing it down through generations of abbots, a whispered history that never made it into official records. Now, 800 years later, whatever lies beneath is making itself known. The decision to excavate is not made lightly. There are discussions, debates that stretch late into the night. The church sends archaeologists. The French government dispatches engineers and historians. You find yourself part of a team of 12 specialists, each chosen for their discretion as much as their expertise. The dig begins on a Tuesday morning in October, the air crisp with the promise of winter. The first week is slow, methodical work. You remove flagstones one by one, cataloging each piece, photographing everything. Beneath the floor, you find exactly what the medieval monks found, worked stone that predates their construction by centuries, possibly millennia. The blocks are massive, fitted together with a precision that rivals Roman engineering. But the style is wrong. The cuts are too clean. The angles are too precise. Modern tools could achieve this, but these stones are ancient. Dr. James Morrison, the lead archaeologist, runs his hand along one block and shakes his head. "This shouldn't exist," he mutters. He's a man who spent 40 years studying ancient construction, and he's never seen anything like this. The team works in shifts, carefully removing debris, always aware that they're unwrapping something that was deliberately hidden. On day 9, you break through. The moment happens at 3 in the morning. You're on the night shift with 2 others, working by the harsh light of halogen lamps. Your pickaxe strikes a hollow space, and suddenly, you're not just chipping at stone. You're creating an opening into something vast. Cold air rushes out, air that hasn't moved in longer than you want to imagine. It smells of minerals and time, a scent like deep caves and sealed tombs. You widen the opening carefully, shining your flashlight into the darkness beyond. The beam disappears into blackness so complete, it seems to swallow the light. You drop a glow stick through the opening and watch it fall. It falls for 3 seconds before landing, a tiny green spark in an ocean of shadow. That's roughly 45 meters. Whatever space lies beneath the monastery, it's enormous.
The excitement is electric, but so is the fear. You've all read the stories, heard the warnings about disturbed tombs and cursed discoveries. But curiosity is a powerful thing, and this is the find of the century. By dawn, you've widened the opening enough for a person to descend. A steel ladder is lowered, secured at multiple points. Dr. Morrison volunteers to go first, and you insist on being second. Safety protocols demand that no one goes alone. The descent takes longer than you expect. The ladder sways slightly with each step, and you keep your eyes focused on the rungs, trying not to think about the darkness pressing in from all sides. Your headlamp creates a small bubble of light in the void, but it only makes the surrounding darkness seem more absolute. The air grows colder as you descend, and you can see your breath misting in the beam of your light. When your feet finally touch bottom, you're standing on a floor so smooth it could be polished. Your light sweeps across the space, and you realize you're in a corridor, not a natural cave formation, but an actual architectural space. The walls are covered in something that looks like glass or ceramic, dark and reflective, throwing back fragments of your light. The ceiling arches overhead, lost in shadow despite your powerful lamp. Dr. Morrison's voice crackles over the radio. "Are you seeing this?"
You are. You're seeing it, but you're not quite believing it. The corridor stretches ahead, perfectly straight, perfectly preserved. There's no rubble, no collapse, no sign of age or decay. It looks like it was built yesterday and then immediately sealed away. But the style is wrong for anything in the historical record. It's not Egyptian, not Roman, not Mycenaean, not anything you recognize. You begin to walk, your footsteps echoing strangely in the space. The corridor runs for perhaps 50 meters before opening into a larger chamber. And this is where the real strangeness begins. The chamber is vast, perhaps the size of a cathedral. But unlike any cathedral, the walls here glow. Not brightly, but with a soft, ambient luminescence that has no apparent source. It's as if the material itself is producing light, a gentle blue-green radiance that pushes back the darkness without quite banishing it. The effect is dreamlike, unsettling. You've never seen anything like it in your career. In the center of the chamber stands a structure that defies easy description. It's roughly cylindrical, perhaps 10 meters in diameter and twice that in height. The surface is covered in what might be writing, or circuitry, or something that combines elements of both. Symbols flow across the surface in patterns that seem to almost move when you're not looking directly at them. Dr. Morrison is photographing everything, his hands shaking slightly with excitement or fear, or both. "This changes everything," he whispers. "This absolutely changes everything." You approach the central structure carefully, aware that every step is taking you further from the known world and deeper into something inexplicable. The symbols on the surface are raised, like braille, and when you touch them, they're warm. Not hot, but noticeably warmer than the surrounding air. It's as if the structure is alive, or at least active in some way. Around the chamber's perimeter, you discover openings. Not doors exactly, but passageways that lead deeper into the complex. There are 12 of them, evenly spaced, each one a dark mouth leading into further mystery. You mark them with numbered tags, standard archaeological procedure, though nothing about this situation feels standard. You radio to the surface, reporting your findings. The response is immediate and urgent. Don't touch anything. Don't go any further. Wait for the full team. But you and Dr. Morrison are already committed. You've opened Pandora's box, and there's no closing it now. You select the first passageway and begin to walk. This new corridor is different from the entrance. The walls here are transparent in places, or perhaps translucent, showing glimpses of vast spaces beyond. Through one section, you see what might be another chamber, this one filled with geometric shapes that hang suspended in the air like a three-dimensional maze. Through another, you glimpse what looks like a garden, though the plants are crystalline, frozen in time, preserved in whatever this place is. The corridor ends in a door,
An actual door, the first you've encountered. It's circular, perhaps 3 meters across, and covered in more of those strange symbols. Dr. Morrison reaches out to touch it, and you don't stop him. You should, but you don't. The moment his fingers make contact, the symbols light up, one by one, in a sequence that spirals from the outer edge to the center. The door dilates, opening like an iris, revealing what lies beyond. You're standing at the edge of a cavern so large your lights can't find the far wall. But it's not the size that stops your heart. It's what the cavern contains. Stretching out before you, as far as your light can reach, is a city. An entire city, underground, perfectly preserved, glowing with that same soft bioluminescence you saw in the first chamber. Buildings rise in graceful curves and impossible angles, connected by elevated walkways that trace geometric patterns through the air. In the distance, you can see what might be towers, or perhaps there's something else entirely. The architecture defies conventional understanding. And the city is silent, completely, utterly silent. No wind, no water, no sign of life or active defense. Just the vast, waiting quiet of a place that's been sleeping for longer than human memory. Dr. Morrison's voice is barely a whisper. How is this even possible? You have no answer. You have nothing but questions, a growing sense of awe, and the creeping realization that you've just stumbled into something that will change the course of human history. This isn't just an archaeological find. This is proof that everything we thought we knew about our past is wrong. The city waits in silence, its secrets preserved in the darkness beneath the monastery. And you, Dr. Sarah Chen, structural engineer turned reluctant explorer, are about to become the first human being in millennia to walk its streets and uncover its mysteries. The question isn't whether you'll continue. The question is whether you'll be able to live with what you find. The full team descends over the next 48 hours. 12 specialists become 20, then 30, as word spreads through carefully controlled channels. The French government seals off the monastery, declaring it a historical preservation site. Military personnel establish a perimeter, though they're told it's to protect the integrity of the archaeological find. Only you and a handful of others know the truth. They're here to keep this discovery contained until someone figures out what it means. You've set up a base camp in that first large chamber, the one with the glowing walls and the mysterious central structure. Portable generators power lights and equipment, though increasingly you find you don't need them. The city provides its own illumination, that eerie blue-green glow that never quite brightens to day but never fully fades to darkness. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a specialist in ancient civilizations, arrives on the third day. She's been pulled from a dig in Peru, given only the barest outline of what's been found. When she sees the city for the first time, she literally sits down, right there at the threshold, and stares. For 10 minutes, she doesn't say a word. When she finally speaks, her voice is small and distant. This shouldn't be here. This can't be here. But it is here, and every hour brings new impossibilities.
The team begins a systematic exploration, working in pairs, mapping the city one section at a time. You pair with Dr. Tanaka, drawn to her expertise in interpreting ancient cultures. Together, you venture into the city's main thoroughfare, a broad avenue that runs straight as an arrow from the entrance deeper into the cavern. The buildings on either side are intact, perfect, as if their inhabitants simply walked away yesterday. Through transparent walls, you can see interior spaces furnished with objects that might be furniture, or art, or technology. It's impossible to tell. Everything has that same smooth, organic quality, as if it was grown rather than built. Look at the doorways, Dr. Tanaka says, pointing. They're scaled for humans, or at least for something very close to human, average height around 1.7 meters, based on the proportions. But look at the width. They're wider than our doors, much wider. Whatever lived here, they were broader than us, more heavily built perhaps. You document everything with cameras and scanners, creating a digital map that grows more detailed with each passing hour. The city is enormous, stretching for what must be several square kilometers. Not just one cavern, but a series of interconnected spaces, each one carved out of the living rock with a precision that defies explanation. On the fourth day, you discover the plaza. It's a vast, open space at what seems to be the heart of the city, surrounded by the largest structures you've seen so far. In the center of the plaza stands a monument, and this is where things get truly strange. The monument is a sphere, perhaps 20 meters in diameter, floating a meter above the ground with no visible means of support. It rotates slowly, completing one revolution approximately every 10 minutes. Its surface is covered in those symbols you've seen elsewhere, but here they're animated, flowing across the surface in hypnotic patterns. Dr. Morrison brings in a linguistic expert, Dr. Amara Okafor, who's made her career studying undeciphered ancient scripts. She spends 3 days studying the monument, photographing it from every angle, trying to find patterns in the flowing symbols. On the third night, she calls an emergency meeting. "I don't think it's writing," she announces. "Not in the conventional sense. It's more like code. Like code. See how the symbols repeat in sequences? How they interact with each other? It's mathematical. Algorithmic. Whoever created this wasn't writing a message. They were writing instructions." The implications hang in the air like smoke. Instructions for what? And more importantly, instructions for whom? You continue exploring, pushing deeper into the city. You find spaces that might be homes, with raised platforms that could be beds, and alcoves that might have held possessions. You find what might be workshops, containing tools you can't identify and materials you can't classify. You find a structure that could be a library, its walls lined with crystalline tablets, each one containing information you have no way to access. And you find the first of the sleepers. It happens in what you've designated Sector 7, a residential area near the city's eastern edge. Dr. Tanaka is scanning a building when she notices an anomaly in the readings. There's a heat signature, faint but distinct, coming from a chamber deep within the structure. You investigate, carefully removing panels that might be walls or might be doors, until you find the source. The chamber is small, perhaps 3 meters on each side. In the center stands a vertical capsule made of that same transparent material you've seen throughout the city. And inside the capsule is a figure. It's humanoid, roughly human-sized, but clearly not human. The proportions are wrong in subtle ways. The skull is broader, the chest deeper, the arms slightly longer relative to the body. The skin has a gray-green cast, and the features, while recognizable as a face, are distinctly alien. The eyes are closed, the expression peaceful. It could be sleeping, or it could be dead. There's no way to tell. But the scanners tell a different story. There's brain activity, minimal but present. Neural patterns that rise and fall in slow rhythms like waves on a distant shore. Whatever this being is, it's not dead. It's suspended, preserved, waiting. The discovery sends shockwaves through the team. Within hours, you found 3 more sleepers, each in their own chamber, each perfectly preserved. Then 10 more. Then 50. Then hundreds. The city, you realize, isn't just abandoned. It's a vast preservation facility, a cryogenic vault holding an entire population in stasis. Dr. Peterson, the team's medical expert, studies the sleepers with a mixture of fascination and horror. He explains, "The level of technology required for this is beyond anything we have. Not just the preservation itself, but the monitoring systems, the life support. These beings have been in stasis for
I can't even estimate. Thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, and their neural activity remains stable, organized. They're not brain dead, they're dreaming. The word hangs in the air. Dreaming. These ancient beings, sealed in their crystalline coffins, are dreaming. What dreams must they have after so much time? What nightmares? Or perhaps they dream of nothing at all, suspended in an eternal moment between sleep and waking. You establish protocols for approaching the sleeper chambers. No touching, no attempts at opening the capsules, no interference with any systems that might be keeping them alive. But the temptation is enormous. Here, preserved in perfect stasis, are the answers to every question about the city, about the civilization that built it, about what happened to drive them underground. The team expands the search, mapping the distribution of sleepers throughout the city. The numbers are staggering. You estimate there are at least 10,000 capsules, possibly more in sections you haven't explored. An entire civilization, frozen in time, waiting for something. Dr. Tanaka makes the next crucial discovery. She's studying the architectural layout when she notices that the city isn't random. It's organized in a specific pattern, radiating out from that central plaza with its floating sphere. Each district has a specific purpose, identifiable by the types of buildings and the distribution of sleepers.
It's not a city in the traditional sense, she explains, showing her findings to the group. It's more like a ark, a preservation facility designed to hold a population until what? Until conditions on the surface improved? Until some threat passed? We're missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. You find that piece in Sector 12, in what appears to be an administrative building near the city's center. The structure is larger than most, with that same transparent quality that lets you see multiple levels stacked vertically. Inside, you discover something that looks like a control room, walls covered in displays that spring to life as you approach. The displays show Earth, or at least what you think is Earth. The continental shapes are recognizable, but the configurations are wrong. The coastlines don't match current geography. This is Earth from the deep past, from a time when the continents were arranged differently, when sea levels were different, when the world was a different place. Dr. Claire Abbott, the team's geologist, studies the displays with growing excitement. "This is incredible," she breathes. "Based on the continental positions, I'd say this represents Earth somewhere between 20 and 30,000 years ago, maybe older. But look at this." She points to markers scattered across the map, concentrated in certain areas. These could be settlements, population centers. There was a global civilization, a civilization we have no record of. And then she noticed something else. The displays aren't static, they're animated, showing progression over time. You watch as the markers begin to disappear one by one, concentrating towards certain points. You watch as the surface appears to change, darkening in some areas, becoming hostile. You watch as whatever civilization existed on the surface gradually withdrew, contracted, vanished. The final frame shows only a handful of markers remaining, and one of them, you realize with a chill, is located exactly where you are now, beneath what would one day become a Benedictine monastery in central France. "They were hiding," Dr. Morrison says softly. "They built these underground cities to hide from something. But what?" The answer comes 3 days later, when Dr. O'Coffer finally cracks the code on the central monument. She's been working around the clock, feeding the symbols into pattern recognition software, comparing them to every known ancient script and mathematical system. And suddenly, it clicks. The symbols aren't writing in the linguistic sense. They're coordinates, star charts, astronomical data spanning millennia. And they're telling a story. a story of Earth's encounter with something that came from the stars, something that arrived roughly 25,000 years ago and changed everything. The details are unclear, filtered through symbols you're still learning to interpret, but the broad strokes are unmistakable. There was a civilization, a global civilization, far more advanced than anything in our historical record. And that civilization was destroyed by something from beyond Earth.
The survivors went underground. They built these sleeping cities, these arks, and sealed themselves away, not just hiding, but waiting, preserving their population until the threat passed, until it was safe to return to the surface. But something went wrong. The cities were meant to be temporary shelters, designed to revive their occupants after a specific period. But that revival never happened. The systems continued to function, keeping the sleepers alive, but whatever was supposed to wake them failed to activate. And so they slept on, decade after decade, century after century, millennia after millennia, until a crack opened in the floor of a monastery and a structural engineer named Chen discovered their tomb. The revelation leaves the team reeling. This isn't just an archaeological find. This is proof of a lost civilization, proof that humanity's timeline extends far deeper into the past than anyone imagined. Proof that Earth has been visited by something alien, something dangerous enough to drive an entire civilization underground. The question that keeps everyone awake at night is simple but terrible. Is that threat still out there? And if you wake the sleepers, will you be calling it back? The debate rages for 2 weeks. The team is split down the middle. Half argue that you have a moral obligation to attempt awakening the sleepers, that keeping them in stasis is tantamount to imprisonment. The other half insists that you have no idea what you're dealing with, that any attempt at revival could be catastrophic. The French government, once they fully understand what's been found, wants to seal the city and bury it. Too dangerous, too destabilizing, too many questions that would undermine the entire established narrative of human history. But word has leaked despite their best efforts. Rumors spread through academic circles, through intelligence agencies, through the halls of power around the world. Everyone wants access. Everyone wants answers. You find yourself in the uncomfortable position of being one of the few people who've been here from the beginning, who've seen everything, who understand the full scope of what's been discovered. Your opinion carries weight even though you never asked for that responsibility, and you're torn. The engineer in you wants to understand the systems, to learn how they work, to unlock the secrets of technology that's millennia ahead of anything humanity has achieved. But another part of you, the part that lies awake at night, whispers warnings about things that should remain buried. The decision is taken out of your hands on a Wednesday morning in December, 3 months after that first crack in the monastery floor. Dr. Peterson discovers something in his analysis of the sleepers' neural patterns. The brain activity is declining. Slowly, imperceptibly over short periods, but measurably when compared across weeks. Whatever systems are maintaining the stasis, they're degrading. Not failing catastrophically, but wearing down after millennia of continuous operation. If we do nothing, he explains to the assembled team, these beings will simply fade away. In a year, 10 years, a century? I can't predict, but the trajectory is clear. The system is dying, and when it fails, everything it's preserving will die with it. The calculation becomes simple, if not easy. You can try to preserve the stasis, which might buy time but solves nothing. You can let them fade, which feels like murder, or you can try to wake them, which might save them, or might kill them, or might unleash something you can't control. Dr. O'Coffer, working with the linguistic team, has made progress on the monument's symbols. She's identified sequences that appear to be instructions, protocols for various city functions, and buried deep in those protocols, she finds something labeled in a way that translates roughly as revival sequence or awakening procedure.
The instructions are complex, requiring coordinated actions at multiple points throughout the city, but they're comprehensible, translatable into steps that humans can follow. The system was designed to be operated, which means it was designed to be understood. The team votes. It's as democratic as you can make it under the circumstances, though you all know that higher authorities could override any decision. The vote is 8-6 in favor of attempting a limited awakening. Not the entire city, not all 10,000 sleepers, but one. A single capsule, carefully monitored, with full medical support standing by. You select a sleeper from a chamber near the central plaza, one whose neural patterns are particularly strong, whose physical condition appears most stable. The ethics of this choice haunt you. How do you decide which ancient being gets to be the test subject? But the alternative is to let them all die, and that seems worse. The preparation takes a week. You followed the instructions from the monument, working in teams to activate systems throughout the city. It's like conducting an orchestra, each section coming online in sequence, building toward a crescendo. The city responds, its luminescence brightening, new sounds emerging from systems that have been dormant for millennia. Harmonic frequencies that resonate through the stone, making your bones vibrate. The night before the awakening, you can't sleep. You walk through the empty streets of the sleeping city, past buildings whose purposes you still don't understand, past monuments whose meanings remain obscure. You find yourself back at the plaza, standing before the rotating sphere. The symbols flow across its surface, and you realize you started to recognize patterns, started to understand fragments of the message it contains. The sphere is a warning, a record of what happened, yes, but also a warning to stay hidden, to remain in stasis until specific conditions are met. Conditions the monument doesn't fully specify, but implies are related to the threat that drove the civilization underground, the threat from the stars. And those conditions, you realize with a chill, have not been met. The revival was supposed to wait for an all-clear signal that never came. Instead, it's being triggered by the degradation of the system, a failsafe that the designers never intended to activate. You're not following the proper protocol. You're improvising, working with incomplete information, hoping you're not about to make a catastrophic mistake. But it's too late to stop now. Too many people are invested, too many resources committed, too many governments watching and waiting for results. The machine is in motion, and you're just a small part of it now. The awakening begins at dawn, though there's no dawn here in the underground city, just the eternal twilight glow. The team assembles around the selected chamber, medical equipment standing ready, cameras recording everything. Dr. Peterson has the override controls, a literal kill switch in case something goes wrong. You're not sure what wrong means in this context, but you're grateful someone's thinking about contingencies. Dr. Akoffer initiates the sequence from the control room, following the monument's instructions to the letter. Throughout the city, systems activate in cascade. The luminescence brightens noticeably, and that harmonic sound intensifies, becoming almost uncomfortably loud. You feel it in your chest, in your teeth, a vibration that seems to resonate with something deep in your cellular structure. The selected capsule begins to change. The transparent material clouds becoming opaque, then translucent, cycling through states. Inside, you can see the sleeper's body responding. The gray-green skin flushes with color, taking on warmer tones. The chest rises and falls, shallow at first, then more deeply. After millennia of stasis, this being is breathing. The process takes 3 hours. 3 hours of watching biological systems restart one by one, monitored by equipment that's barely capable of understanding what it's measuring. Dr. Peterson provides a running commentary, his voice tight with tension. Neural activity increasing, brain stem functions coming online, autonomic systems engaging. This is incredible. We're literally watching a resurrection. The capsule opens, not dramatically, but gradually, the material retracting into the base until the sleeper is fully exposed. The being's eyes remain closed, but you can see rapid movement beneath the lids. REM sleep, the same pattern humans display when dreaming. And then the eyes open. They're large, larger than human eyes, and entirely black. No visible sclera, no iris, just deep, liquid darkness that seems to absorb light. The being's gaze moves around the chamber, taking in the assembled team, the equipment, the strange humans crowding around. There's intelligence in those eyes, and fear, and confusion. The being tries to sit up and immediately collapses. Its muscles, after millennia of disuse, can't support its weight, despite whatever preservation the system provided. Dr. Peterson and his team move in with support, helping the being into a more comfortable position, checking vital signs, speaking in soft, soothing tones, even though they have no idea if their words are understood.
The being's mouth opens. A sound emerges, something between a whisper and a groan. Not words, or at least not words in any language humanity knows, but it's vocalization, an attempt at communication. Dr. Okafor steps forward, holding a tablet displaying the symbols from the monument. She points to herself and says her name, then points to the tablet, hoping to establish some basis for communication. The being's dark eyes track the movement, focus on the symbols, and something changes in its expression. Recognition, perhaps, or remembrance. The being reaches out with one long-fingered hand and touches the tablet. The symbols respond, rearranging themselves, forming new patterns. And then a voice emerges from the tablet's speaker. Not the being's voice, but a synthesized approximation, speaking words the tablet translates from the symbols. Where? When? How long? 3 simple questions that contain universes of meaning. You realize that the city's systems include translation protocols, technology that can interpret and bridge languages. The being isn't speaking English, but the tablet is converting its intent into words you can understand. Dr. Okafor answers carefully, explaining in simple terms. 25,000 years. You've been in stasis for 25,000 years. The world above has changed. Your civilization is gone. The being's expression, alien as it is, clearly shows devastation. Grief so profound it transcends species. You watch as this ancient survivor processes information that would shatter any mind. Everything it knew, everyone it loved, gone for 25 millennia. But then the being asks another question, and this one makes your blood run cold. Is it gone? The threat? Is it safe? Dr. Okafor looks at you, at Dr. Morrison, at the others. No one knows how to answer. You have no idea what the threat was, no idea if it's still out there. You've awakened this being without knowing if the danger that drove its civilization underground has passed. The being sees your hesitation and understands. Its expression shifts from grief to something that might be horror or might be resignation. Through the tablet, it speaks again. You didn't know. You opened the city without checking. You've called it back. The words hang in the air like a death sentence. Around the chamber, the team exchanges glances heavy with dread. Called what back? Called what back from where? But before anyone can ask, alarms begin to sound. Not human alarms, but something from the city itself, a rising wail that echoes through the streets and chambers, a sound that hasn't been heard in 25,000 years. The being's eyes widen with unmistakable fear. Too late, it whispers through the tablet. It felt the awakening. It knows we're here, and it's coming. High above, on the surface world, in the monastery that stands unknowing above the ancient city, Brother Jean is praying when the first tremor hits. The building shakes, stones shifting in their mortar for the first time in 800 years.
He runs to the window and looks out at the night sky. The stars are wrong. Constellations he's known his entire life are blocked out by something massive, something that wasn't there moments ago. Something that's descending through the atmosphere, burning with an unnatural light that makes his eyes water. In the city below, you hear the voice through the tablet speaking words that sound like a prayer, or maybe a warning, or maybe just the final testimony of a civilization that tried to hide and failed. It hunts those who remember. It consumes those who build. We thought we could wait it out, sleep until it moved on, but it never moves on. It just waits for the signal, and you gave it one. The city's illumination flares bright, then begins to dim, cycling through a pattern you recognize from the monument. Not a malfunction, but a deliberate sequence, a warning system designed to alert the sleepers to danger, a warning that comes 25,000 years too late. You look at the being, this ancient survivor of an ancient horror, and ask the only question that matters now. What do we do? The being's answer is simple and terrible. Run. The being's name, translated through the tablet as closely as possible, is Kale, or at least that's the approximation the system provides. Its actual name involves harmonics and frequencies that human vocal cords can't produce, a language that was old when humanity was young. The over-frantic hours as alarms continue to wail and the city systems cycle through emergency protocols, Kale tells you a story. He speaks slowly, pausing often as his body readjusts to consciousness, as memories resurface after millennia of suspension. Dr. Okafor records everything, the tablet translating Kale's words into a narrative that rewrites human understanding of Earth's history. 27,000 years ago, Kale's people weren't the only intelligent species on Earth. They were one of three. There were the builders, which is what Kale's people called themselves. There were the swimmers, an aquatic civilization that controlled the deep oceans. And there were the forerunners, an earlier species that had achieved technology even more advanced than the builders and then mysteriously vanished, leaving behind ruins and warnings. The builders had a golden age. They'd built cities across every continent, had developed technology that could manipulate matter at the molecular level, had even begun to explore the solar system. Mars had a Kale builder outpost. So did Europa. They were on the verge of reaching the stars.
And then it arrived. Kyle doesn't have a name for it. The tablet provides several translations: the harvester, the consumer, the voice in the dark, but the closest approximation in human language would be the silence, because that's what it brought: silence. Not the peace of quiet, but the silence of absence, of entire civilizations erased so completely that even their memory disappeared. It came from between the stars, Kyle explains, its voice through the tablet carrying an echo of ancient terror. Not from a planet or a sun, but from the true void, the space where even light fears to travel. It was vast beyond measuring, intelligent beyond understanding, and it was hungry. The silence wasn't alive, not in any way that biology could define. It was something else, something that existed in a state between energy and matter, between thought and physicality. It fed on consciousness itself, on the spark of awareness that separates thinking beings from simple organic machines, and it had been feeding for longer than planets had been forming. The builders first detected its approach through radio telescopes pointed at deep space, a region of stars going dark, one after another, a spreading void that swallowed light and left nothing behind. They had 2 years to prepare before it reached Earth's solar system, 2 years to realize that everything they'd built, all their weapons and technology, were useless against something that didn't operate according to physical laws they understood. We tried to fight, Kyle says,
And you can hear the grief in its translated voice. We built ships and flew them into the darkness. They never returned. We created weapons that could crack continents, and they had no effect. We sent our best minds to analyze it, to find a weakness. They came back changed, empty, their consciousness consumed. It wasn't a war, it was a harvest. The swimmers went first. Their ocean cities fell silent within weeks of the silence's arrival. The builders sent expeditions to investigate and found the cities intact, perfectly preserved, but empty of all life. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just vast underwater metropolises waiting in the dark. Their inhabitants simply gone. The builders realized they couldn't win, so they did the only thing they could. They hid. Teams of engineers and scientists worked around the clock to construct underground sanctuaries, sealed chambers that could shield their inhabitants not just from physical detection, but from whatever sense the silence used to locate conscious minds. We found that it hunted by awareness, Kyle explains. The more complex the thought, the more easily it could sense you. A human brain, primitive as it was then, barely registered. But our minds, our technology, our cities full of thinking beings, we were like beacons. So we went silent. We built these chambers with special shielding, materials woven with mathematics that created blind spots in reality. And then we slept. The plan was simple. Enter stasis and wait. The silence, they'd observed, didn't stay in any one system indefinitely. It fed until there was nothing left to consume, then moved on, always searching, always hungry. The builders estimated it would take perhaps a century for the silence to finish with Earth and depart. They designed their stasis systems to last 10 times that long, a massive safety margin. But something went wrong. Kyle doesn't know what. Maybe the silence didn't leave as expected. Maybe it stayed, waiting for any sign of consciousness to re-emerge. Maybe the revival systems failed. Whatever the reason, the sleepers never woke. Centuries became millennia, millennia became epochs. The ice ages came and went. Continents shifted. And in the underground cities, the last remnants of the builder civilization slept on. Humanity, Kyle says, looking at you with those deep, dark eyes, evolved from those primitive humans we barely noticed. You inherited an empty world. You found our ruins, built your own civilizations on top of them, created your own legends about lost Atlantis and ancient astronauts. But you never knew the truth. You never knew you were living on a graveyard. Dr. Morrison, who's been listening with increasing agitation, finally interrupts. But if the silence left, if it moved on, then why are the alarms sounding? Why did you say we've called it back? Kyle's expression shifts to something that might be resignation or might be ancient bone-deep fear, because it never truly leaves. It waits at the edge of the system, in the dark between planets, listening, always listening. And when you woke me, when you activated the city's systems, you created a beacon, a signal that said, here is consciousness, here is awareness to consume. And the silence heard. The implications crash over you like a wave. You've doomed not just yourself, not just the team, but potentially all of humanity. By opening the city, by waking Kyle, you've drawn the attention of something that has been patiently waiting for 25,000 years for the builders to re-emerge. How long? You ask. How long before it gets here? Kyle tilts its head, listening to something you can't hear, reading signals from the city's systems. It's already in the atmosphere. It began descending the moment the awakening sequence completed. At its current speed, hours, maybe less. The team erupts into chaos. Some want to flee immediately, to run for the surface and escape while they still can. Others argue for sealing the city, trying to hide again. Dr. Peterson suggests putting Kyle back into stasis, hoping that eliminating the signal will make the silence lose interest. But Kyle is shaking its head. Too late for hiding. Too late for running. Once the silence has locked onto a signal, it doesn't stop. It will consume everything in its path until it finds the source. This city, this region, this entire continent, it will strip away consciousness level by level, life by life, until nothing remains. Then what do we do? Dr. Morrison shouts. You're telling us we're dead, that we've killed ourselves by trying to help you. There must be something. Kyle is quiet for a long moment. Then it asks a question that seems to come from nowhere. How many of my people are still in stasis? How many capsules remain intact?
Dr. Tanaka checks her tablet, pulling up the survey data. We estimate between 9 and 10,000, maybe more in sections we haven't fully explored. Kyle's eyes close briefly, and you see something that might be tears, though they're not like human tears. When it speaks again, its voice carries a weight of decision that's been millennia in the making. Then we have one chance, one terrible, desperate chance, but it requires waking everyone, and it requires your species' help. What Kyle proposes is insane. It's suicide. It's the kind of plan that no sane person would consider. But you're not dealing with a sane situation. You're dealing with the end of everything, and desperate times call for desperate measures. The builders, Kyle explains, discovered something during their final days before entering stasis, a weakness in the silence, not a physical weakness, but a conceptual one. The silence fed on consciousness, but consciousness wasn't a passive resource. It was active, reactive. And when multiple conscious minds worked in perfect harmony, creating certain patterns of thought, those patterns could create something like a weapon, or at least a shield. We call it the resonance, Kyle says. It requires thousands of minds all thinking in specific patterns, creating a harmonic of consciousness that the silence cannot penetrate or consume. We designed it as a last resort, tested it in simulations, but we never had the chance to deploy it in reality before we had to hide. The plan is this. Wake all the builders in the city, all 9 or 10,000 of them, rapidly, using emergency protocols that are risky but fast. Get them conscious and coordinated, then combine their mental patterns with human minds. Because humans, Kyle explains, have something the builders don't: novelty. Your consciousness evolved independently, shaped by different experiences, different history. That difference, that variation in the harmonics, might be enough to make the resonance work where it failed in simulations. How many humans, you ask? All of them, Kyle says simply. Everyone on the surface within range of our transmission systems. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, if we can extend the field far enough. All thinking in harmony, all creating the pattern together. It will feel like meditation, like prayer. Your species has traditions that touch on this concept. We need to create that on a massive scale. Dr. Morrison looks like he wants to argue, to point out the 1,000 ways this could fail, but before he can speak, another tremor runs through the city. Not from below this time, but from above. Something massive has landed on the surface. The silence has arrived. Kyle stands, its muscles shaking with the effort after so long in stasis, and looks at you with those alien eyes. Decide quickly. Run and die alone, or stay and we all die together trying to live. Either way, time has ended for hesitation. You look around at the team, these people who've become something like family over the past months of discovery and exploration.
You see fear in their faces, yes, but also determination.
You're scientists, engineers, scholars. You solve problems. And right now, the problem is saving the world. We stay, you say. Tell us what to do. What follows is the most frantic 24 hours of your life. Kael directs teams throughout the city, using the monuments and control systems to initiate emergency awakening protocols for all the sleepers. It's not gentle like Kael's revival. It's a shock to the system, designed to bring someone from full stasis to consciousness in minutes rather than hours. Many might not survive, but survival isn't the priority anymore. Numbers are. While that's happening, you're on the surface, trying to explain the unexplainable to authorities who don't want to believe. The French military has cordoned off the monastery, responding to the object that descended from the sky and embedded itself in the forest 3 kilometers away. It's massive, dark, and wrong in ways that make people's eyes hurt to look at it directly. Pilots report that radar can't get a solid lock. Satellites show static. It's like there's a hole in reality sitting in the French countryside. You don't have time for bureaucracy. You commandeer a radio transmitter and start broadcasting. You explain what's happening, knowing you sound insane, not caring. You need people to listen, to follow instructions, to participate in something they can't possibly understand. And incredibly, terrifyingly, people do. Maybe it's the panic, the videos that are already spreading online showing the darkness that landed from the sky. Maybe it's the military mobilization, the governments issuing emergency broadcasts. Or maybe humans are just hardwired to sense when something existential is happening, when the monsters from the darkest depths of evolutionary memory are suddenly real. Instructions spread through every channel, every network, every means of communication. Find a quiet place, focus your mind, follow this pattern, this rhythm, this simple meditation technique that Kael has translated into terms humans can understand. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 7, out for 8. While breathing, think of connection. Think of all consciousness as one vast web, each mind a node in an infinite network. Feel that connection, believe in it, become it. Underground, the builders are waking. One by one, then in waves, they emerge from stasis. Many are disoriented, confused, terrified by what they're being told. Their world is gone. They've slept for 25,000 years, and now they're being asked to fight an ancient enemy using an untested weapon. But they're also disciplined, trained for this scenario, even if they never thought they'd face it. They take their positions throughout the city, each one a node in the pattern, each one adding their consciousness to the growing resonance. You watch from the control room as the pattern builds. It's visible on the city's systems, displayed as overlapping waves of light and mathematics that create interference patterns of stunning complexity. The builders know what they're doing, falling into the rhythm of the resonance with practiced ease. But it's not enough. The pattern needs more minds, more variation, more of that human chaos that evolution spent millions of years creating.
The French government has evacuated the local region, but they can't evacuate a nation. They've issued shelter-in-place orders instead, asking people to follow the strange instructions being broadcast, to meditate, essentially, to pray in a new way. Reports come in from around Europe. People are complying, not from understanding, but from fear and hope mixed in equal measure. And it's working. You can see it on the monitors. The resonance is building, spreading beyond the city, touching human minds that are trying to follow the pattern. It's rough, chaotic compared to the builders' practiced harmony, but it's there. Consciousness reaching out to consciousness, creating something that's more than the sum of its parts. Outside, the silence is moving, slow but inevitable, spreading out from its landing site like oil on water. Military units report that anything with a brain, from humans to animals, caught in its advancing edge, simply stops. They don't die, exactly. They're emptied, They keep breathing, hearts keep beating, but the spark that makes them alive is gone, consumed, fed to something that hungers for awareness itself. Kael is coordinating everything from the plaza, standing before the rotating sphere, its consciousness linked directly into the city's systems. You're there too, along with Dr. Morrison, Dr. Tanaka, and the others who'd been here from the beginning. You're part of the resonance now, your mind adding its small voice to the growing chorus. And you feel it. That's the terrifying and beautiful part. You actually feel it when the resonance reaches critical mass. It's like waking up from a dream and realizing you were never really awake before. Every mind connected, human and builder, all thinking as one vast organism. You're still yourself, still Dr. Sarah Chen, but you're also everyone else. You feel the fear of a child in Paris who doesn't understand what's happening. You feel the determination of a builder who's been preparing for this moment for millennia. You feel the resonance itself, a harmony of consciousness that's never existed before and might never exist again. And you push back. The silence, pressing against the resonance, is like trying to describe color to someone who's never seen it. It's not darkness, though that's the closest word. It's the absence of light, the absence of heat, the absence of meaning. It's the void between thoughts, the gap between neurons firing stretched out and made manifest. And it's intelligent, not conscious, not alive, but aware in some fundamental way that precedes those definitions. The resonance holds. Barely. You feel it straining, feel the minds that make it up struggling to maintain the pattern against something that wants nothing more than to unravel them. The silence probes, pushing against weak points, looking for any gap it can exploit. And it finds them. People who can't maintain the pattern, whose minds drift or panic. The silence flows through those gaps like water through cracks, consuming, always consuming. But for every gap, there are others who strengthen the pattern. Builders who've trained for this, humans who refuse to give up. The resonance adapts, shifts, finds new configurations. It's not a wall anymore, not a simple shield. It's becoming something else, something organic and fluid, a living pattern of thought that matches the silence's attack with complex harmonics it can't predict or overcome. You lose time. Minutes or hours, you can't tell. All that exists is the resonance, the pattern, the desperate struggle against something that's been feeding on consciousness since before your son was born. Your body is somewhere, you know that abstractly, but your awareness is spread across thousands of minds, holding the line against the dark. And then something shifts. The silence, pressing against the resonance, encounters something it's never faced before. Not resistance, but reflection. The resonance has learned to mirror it, to show it its own hunger reflected back. It's like looking into a mirror that goes down forever, each reflection containing the last, infinite recursion of emptiness feeding on itself. The silence recoils. For the first time in billions of years, it encounters something it cannot consume, something that makes it aware of its own nature in a way that might be the closest thing to pain such an entity can experience. The resonance doesn't destroy it. You're not sure anything could. But it does something perhaps more profound. It makes the silence aware of itself. And that awareness, that consciousness, is exactly what the silence cannot tolerate in itself. The darkness begins to withdraw, slowly at first, then faster, pulling back from the forest, from the region, rising back into the atmosphere. The resonance follows, not attacking, but pushing, a harmonious pattern of consciousness that says, this space is occupied, this world is aware, you cannot feed here. The silence breaks orbit. You feel it through the resonance, feel the ancient hunger retreating, moving out past the moon, past Mars, back toward the dark between worlds. It's not defeated, it's not dead, but it's learned something new.
that consciousness can defend itself, that awareness can be a weapon and a shield, that it's not alone in the universe anymore. The resonance begins to fade. Slowly, gently, letting each mind return to itself. It's like waking from the deepest sleep, that moment of confusion when you're not sure who or where you are. You're back in your body, in the plaza of the sleeping city, surrounded by builders and humans who all wear the same expression of exhausted wonder. Kael looks at you and speaks without the tablet, its voice raw and strange, but unmistakable. The resonance has left its mark, created connections that can't be fully severed. You understand each other now in ways that don't require translation. It worked, Kael says, and there's amazement in its voice. We didn't just survive, we evolved the defense. Your minds and ours together created something neither could achieve alone. The silence will remember this. It will not return here, not while the memory of the resonance remains. You want to celebrate, to cry, to collapse. But there's no time. The world above is in chaos. Governments need answers. People need reassurance. And there are 9,000 newly awakened builders who need to somehow integrate into a world that's moved on without them for 25,000 years. But first you need to sleep. Real sleep, not stasis, not the timeless suspension of the capsules, just ordinary human rest after the most extraordinary day in history. You look up at the ceiling of the cavern, toward the surface you can't see, and wonder what tomorrow will bring. Because everything has changed. The world knows it's not alone now, knows it never was. And the sleepers have awakened, not to reclaim their world, but to learn to share it with the strange, chaotic, surprisingly resilient species that grew up in their absence. The real story, you realize, is just beginning.
In the days that follow, the monastery becomes the de facto headquarters for what everyone's calling First Contact, even though technically it's more like Ancient Contact rediscovered. The French government has given up any pretense of controlling the situation. How do you keep secret a city full of 10,000 aliens who've been asleep beneath your country for longer than recorded history? The builders are adjusting. That's the diplomatic word everyone uses. The reality is more complex. Imagine going to sleep in your hometown and waking up to find that not only has your hometown vanished, but the entire world has been reshaped. Everyone you knew is dead, and there are these strange new people everywhere speaking languages you don't understand and using technology that's simultaneously primitive and inexplicable. Kael has become the de facto liaison between the builders and humanity, partly because it was the first awakened, partly because it seems to have a gift for understanding human thinking. You've spent hours talking with it, learning about the builder civilization, teaching it about the world it's woken into. We built to last, Kael tells you one evening, looking at a tablet displaying news from around the world. Every structure designed to survive millennia. Every system built with redundancies upon redundancies. We thought in terms of deep time, of projects that would take centuries to complete. And now we find ourselves in a world where humans replace their technology every few years, where change happens faster than we thought possible. You're in what's become your office, a chamber near the central plaza that has the best access to communication systems. Outside, teams of humans and builders are working together, mapping the full extent of the underground city, cataloging technology, trying to establish some basis for coexistence. It goes both ways, you say. Humans are learning that we're newcomers here, that we built our entire civilization on top of yours without ever knowing it. That changes things. Kael makes a sound that the translation system renders as laughter, though it doesn't sound like human laughter. Does it? Or do humans simply absorb this as they absorb everything else, making it fit into their existing worldview, filing it away under interesting historical footnote? You want to argue, but Kael has a point. The initial shock is already wearing off. News cycles are moving on. Politicians are talking about how to integrate the builders, as if this is just another immigration issue. The profound implications are being buried under practical concerns about housing, resources, legal status. But there's a more immediate problem, one that's been growing since the awakening, and it's finally come to a head. The builders are split, deeply, fundamentally divided about what to do next, and it's threatening to tear apart the fragile peace that's emerged from the crisis of the silence. The division breaks down roughly into three factions. The Sleepers, led by a builder named Tharn, believe they should return to stasis. The world isn't theirs anymore, they argue. Humans have inherited Earth, and the builders should go back to sleep, perhaps forever, rather than disrupt the natural order. They're haunted by the near catastrophe of the awakening, convinced that their presence will only bring more danger. The Rebuilders, led by a builder named Mira, want to reclaim their place in the world. They argue that Earth was their home first, that they have every right to rebuild their civilization alongside humanity. They look at human technology and see both promise and waste, and they want to guide humanity toward better paths, sharing their knowledge to prevent the mistakes the builders made. And then there are the integrationists, Kael's faction, who believe the only path forward is genuine integration. Not builders and humans coexisting, but builders becoming part of human society, contributing their knowledge and experience while learning from humans' adaptability and innovation. It's the most idealistic vision and perhaps the hardest to achieve. The tensions come to a head in what's being called the Plaza Council, a gathering of builder leaders and human representatives to decide the future. You're there as one of the human delegates, along with Dr. Morrison, who's been appointed as the scientific liaison, and Dr. Tanaka, who's become the lead historian of builder civilization. The plaza has been transformed for the occasion. The rotating sphere at its center still turns, but now it's surrounded by a semicircle of seats where builder and human representatives face each other. The symbolism isn't subtle. Tharn speaks first. Through the translation systems, his voice is calm, measured, sad. We were not meant to wake in this age. Every calculation we made, every preparation, assumed we would return to our world. But our world is gone, replaced by something we don't understand and can't navigate. We've already seen what our presence brings. The silence came because we woke. How many more dangers lurk in the dark, waiting for signs of builder consciousness? How many threats did we flee from that we've forgotten in our long sleep? Tharn gestures to the assembled humans. You've built something remarkable here. In the time it takes a builder to complete a single project, you've risen from scattered tribes to a global civilization. You've achieved in 25,000 years what took us 200,000. You don't need us. You don't need our caution, our slow thinking, our ancient fears. Let us return to sleep. Seal the city. Build your future without our shadows hanging over it. The speech lands heavily. You can see humans and builders alike nodding, moved by Tharn's sacrifice, his willingness to choose extinction rather than disruption. It's a powerful argument, wrapped in nobility and genuine care.
Mira stands next, and where Tharn was measured, Mira is passionate. Tharn speaks of sacrifice, but I hear only fear. Yes, the silence came. Yes, we faced danger. But we also prevailed. Together, builder and human minds created something neither could achieve alone. That's not a reason to hide. It's a reason to continue. Mira paces as it speaks, energy radiating from every movement. Look at what humans have accomplished, yes, but look also at what they're facing. Climate change, resource depletion, weapons that could sterilize continents. The same crises we faced before the silence came. We have knowledge that could help, technology that could transform energy production, material science, agriculture. We could prevent humans from making the same mistakes we made. And in return, Mira continues, humans can teach us what we've lost. Adaptability, speed, the ability to change with changing circumstances. Together, we could build something better than either species achieved alone. Not a human civilization or a builder civilization, but something new, something that could finally reach the stars safely. It's an inspiring vision, and you can see it resonating with some of the builder delegates and many of the humans. The promise of rapid advancement, of solving humanity's greatest challenges with ancient wisdom. But you also see the danger, the implication that humans need to be guided, improved, fixed. It's colonialism wrapped in good intentions. Then Kale stands, and the plaza falls silent. Kale has earned a unique authority through the crisis of the silence, through being the first to wake and the one who coordinated the resonance. When Kale speaks, everyone listens. Both my colleagues offer visions of the future, Kale begins. Tharn offers us peace through absence. Mira offers us purpose through leadership. Both are wrong. The bluntness sends a ripple through the assembly. Kale doesn't soften it. Tharn, you speak of sacrifice, but what you're really proposing is suicide. Not immediate, perhaps, but eventual. The stasis systems are degrading. We all know this. Return to sleep now, and we might have centuries, but not millennia. Eventually, the systems will fail and will die in our capsules, never waking. Is that nobility, or is that giving up? Tharn starts to object, but Kale continues. And Mira, you speak of partnership, but what you describe is parenthood. Humans as children who need our guidance, our superior technology, our wisdom to avoid their mistakes. But humans aren't children. They're a mature species that solved problems we never imagined. They've created art, philosophy, diversity of culture that we, with all our lifespans and all our technology, never achieved. They don't need parents. They need partners. Kale turns to address the entire assembly, builder and human alike. The resonance showed us something profound. It showed us that consciousness isn't meant to be isolated. When we connected, builder and human, we became something greater than either species alone. Not builders using human minds as tools, not humans dependent on builder knowledge, but genuine synthesis. New patterns of thought that neither species could create independently. What I propose is not coexistence, not guidance, but integration, true integration. Builders don't return to stasis. We don't reclaim our world. We join yours. We become part of human civilization, contributing what we can, learning what we must. We intermarry if biology allows. We share our cities and cultures. We let our species blur together until the line between builder and human becomes meaningless. It means giving up our identity as builders. Within generations, there might not be pure builders anymore, just as there might not be unchanged humans. But what we gain is survival, growth, and the chance to create something neither species imagined. A civilization of thought and diversity that could finally fulfill the promise both our species reached for and fell short of. The silence after Kale's speech is profound. You're trying to process the implications. Integration at that level means the end of both species as distinct entities. It means accepting that builder civilization, which survived 25,000 years in stasis, will end not with extinction, but with transformation. It's Dr. Morrison who asks the question everyone's thinking. And if we say no, if humanity decides we're not ready for that level of integration? Kale looks at him directly. Then we hope you change your minds before the stasis systems fail and we become extinct. We don't have the resources to force integration, and we wouldn't want to. This has to be a choice, made freely by both species. But it's a bedline. Every year we wait, More stasis systems degrade. More builders wake to find their options narrowing. Eventually, the choice will be made for us by circumstance. The debate continues for hours, stretching into days. The builder factions argue among themselves, with humans mostly watching, aware that this is fundamentally a builder decision about builder futures. But the implications for humanity are enormous. Accept the integrationist's vision, and you're accepting a future where humanity as you've known it will transform into something new. Reject it, and you're condemning 9,000 sentient beings to eventual extinction. You find yourself talking with Kale late one night, after another exhausting council session. You're in the chamber that's become Kale's quarters, sparsely furnished by both human and builder standards. Kale has adapted to using human furniture, though it looks uncomfortable for its different physiology. Why integration, you ask? Why not something less final? Coexistence with maintained boundaries, separate communities working together. Kale is quiet for a moment, and you've learned to read his pauses. He's accessing memories, reaching back through millennia of stored experience. Before we entered stasis, he says finally, we builders had achieved something remarkable. We'd eliminated war among ourselves, created a global civilization of peace and prosperity. We thought we'd solved the fundamental problem of intelligent species, how to live together. But the silence showed us we were wrong. Our peace was stagnation. We all thought alike, moved at the same cautious pace, made the same careful calculations. We had unity, but we'd lost dynamism. We couldn't adapt quickly enough when threat came from outside our experience. That's why the silence nearly destroyed us despite our advantages.
Kale gestures to the tablet, showing news feeds from around the world. Humans arguing, creating, destroying, building, fighting, loving, all simultaneously, all chaotically. Humans have chaos, glorious, frustrating, sometimes destructive chaos. You can't agree on anything, can't move in lockstep, can't maintain consistency across your globe, and that's your strength. When crisis comes, you have 1,000 different responses, 1,000 different solutions. Most fail, but some succeed in ways no one predicted. Integration isn't about making humans more like builders, or builders more like humans, Kale concludes. It's about creating a species that has both our stability and your chaos, our deep-time thinking and your rapid adaptation. It's about acknowledging that neither of us is complete alone. The words resonate, but you're still troubled. And if it doesn't work, if the integration creates something worse than either species alone? Kale's expression shifts to something you've learned to read as a smile. Then we'll have failed together, which is better than succeeding apart. Because the universe is full of threats like the silence, full of challenges that require new ways of thinking. Isolated species, however advanced, eventually stagnate or get consumed. But species that can integrate, that can absorb and incorporate new perspectives, they have a chance, perhaps the only chance. The Plaza Council eventually reaches a decision, though it's not the clean resolution anyone hoped for. The builders will split. Those who choose stasis can return to their capsules, with human authorities agreeing to maintain and protect the systems as long as possible. Those who choose integration can join human society, with nations around the world offering settlement and support. And those who want to rebuild separately can establish their own communities, though they'll have to do so under human laws and regulations. It's messy, complicated, full of compromises that satisfy no one completely. In other words, it's the most human solution possible. And perhaps that's appropriate. Of the 9,000 awakened builders, roughly 2,000 choose to return to stasis.
Tharn leads them in a solemn ceremony, each one entering their capsule and saying what amounts to a final goodbye to consciousness. You watch as Tharn himself enters stasis, and you wonder if you'll ever see any of them wake again. The mathematics suggest probably not, that by the time the systems fail, everyone who remembers the builders firsthand will be long dead. Another 3,000 choose to attempt separate rebuilding. They're establishing communities in remote areas, places where they can try to recreate some version of builder society while existing within the human world. Mira leads them, still arguing for the gradual reform of human civilization through builder example and guidance. You wish them well, but you suspect they're headed for disappointment. The world has moved on, and it won't move backward to accommodate nostalgia. The remaining 4,000, Kale among them, choose integration. They're being dispersed around the world, individuals and small groups joining human communities, bringing their knowledge and experience, but committing to learning human ways, human languages, human customs. Section 6. The Price of Knowledge. 3 months after the Plaza Council, you're learning that saving the world is the easy part. Living with the consequences is what breaks you. It starts small. A builder named Vesh, one of the integrationists who chose to settle in Tokyo, is found dead in their apartment. Not murdered, not attacked, just dead. The autopsy reveals nothing conclusive. The body simply stopped functioning, organs shutting down in sequence like someone had flipped a switch. Dr. Peterson flies out to investigate and returns with a theory that makes your stomach turn. It's the resonance, he explains in a late-night briefing, that includes you, Kale, Dr. Morrison, and a growing list of government officials who've made the monastery their permanent headquarters. Or rather, the absence of it. During the crisis, we created a connection between millions of minds. For humans, that was novel, intense, but temporary. We went back to our normal, isolated consciousness. But for builders, he pulls up brain scans, comparing builder neural patterns before and after the resonance. The difference is stark. Builders evolved to think in deeper connection than humans. Their neural architecture supports more complex social bonding, more persistent awareness of others. The resonance wasn't just a tool for them. It was a glimpse of what their consciousness was meant to be, and then we severed it. Kale's expression is carefully neutral, but you've learned to read the subtle signs, the slight tension in the shoulders, the way its eyes don't quite focus. "You're saying we're dying of loneliness," it says quietly. "I'm saying your species evolved for a level of connection that doesn't exist anymore. Your civilization is gone. The other builders are scattered or in stasis. And human minds, while compatible during crisis, can't maintain that depth of connection naturally. You're like social animals forced into solitary confinement." The news spreads quickly through the builder communities. Panic sets in. 3 more deaths follow within a week, all showing the same pattern. The integrationists start to break, some demanding to return to stasis, others turning to the rebuilder communities, seeking any form of builder connection. You watch Kale deteriorate over the following weeks. It tries to hide it, maintaining the facade of the strong leader, the bridge between species. But you see the signs. The longer pauses in conversation, the way it sometimes seems to be listening to voices that aren't there, the growing distance in its eyes. One night, you find Kale in the plaza, standing before the rotating sphere. The city is quiet now. Most of the builders gone, the human researchers return to the surface. Just a skeleton crew maintaining the systems for the 2,000 who chose stasis. "I can hear them sometimes," Kyle says without turning. "The other builders, echoes from the resonance. But when I reach for those connections, there's nothing, just the memory of connection, which is somehow worse than never having known it at all." You move to stand beside it, looking up at the sphere with its flowing symbols. What can we do? Peterson is working on something. a technological solution, a way to create artificial connections between builder minds, but it's years away, maybe decades, and we're dying now. Kael's voice is flat, matter-of-fact. The irony is perfect. We survived the silence. We outlasted our civilization, and now we're dying from success, from the very integration we chose. But the crisis of the dying builders is only the first consequence. The second emerges from an entirely different direction, and it's far more dangerous. The Chinese government makes the announcement on a Tuesday morning. They've discovered their own underground city, this one beneath the Tibetan Plateau, larger than the French site, with an estimated 15,000 builders in stasis. And unlike the French, who've been fumbling toward transparency, the Chinese have no intention of sharing. The news hits like a bomb. If there's a city in France and another in Tibet, how many more are there? Where else did the builders hide? The race begins immediately. Ground-penetrating radar surveys spread across every continent. Ancient sites are re-examined with new eyes. Geological anomalies that were dismissed as natural formations suddenly demand investigation. India announces a discovery 2 weeks later. A complex beneath the Deccan Plateau, partially collapsed, but with intact sections showing thousands more capsules. The United States confirms something in the Four Corners region of the Southwest. Russia, beneath Siberia. Australia, in the outback. Brazil, under the Amazon basin. Each discovery brings the same pattern. Ancient builder cities, populations in stasis, technology that makes modern science look like children playing with blocks. And each nation that finds a site immediately claims it as sovereign territory, refusing international oversight. You watch from the monastery as the world transforms around you. The fragile cooperation that emerged during the resonance crisis evaporates. Nations see the builder sites as resources to be exploited, advantages to be pressed. The race for builder technology becomes the new arms race, the new space race, the new defining competition of the age. The Americans are the first to try forced awakening. They don't consult with Kael or any of the integrationists. They don't follow the protocols that were worked out so carefully. They just pump power into the stasis systems and hit whatever looks like a start button. 1,700 builders die instantly. Their systems, carefully balanced for gentle revival, overload and fail. The survivors wake into trauma and confusion, finding themselves prisoners of a government that views them as assets rather than people. The international condemnation is immediate but hollow, because within weeks, Russia tries the same thing with better results, managing to wake 500 builders while losing only 200. And suddenly the calculus changes. The moral arguments against forced awakening crumble against the promise of technological advantage. Builder technology begins flooding into human hands, not through cooperation, not through careful study, but through coercion and reverse engineering. Weapons that the builders developed for defense against the silence are adapted for human conflicts. Power sources that were meant to sustain underground cities for millennia are weaponized. Material science that the builders took millennia to develop is crammed into crash military programs. Kael watches it all with growing horror. "This is why we should have stayed asleep," it says one evening. You're in what's become a nightly ritual, sitting together in the quiet hours when the monastery is asleep, talking through the day's disasters. Not because we couldn't integrate, but because integration requires both species to choose it, and your species has chosen exploitation instead. You want to argue, to defend humanity, but the evidence is overwhelming. Even the French government, which started with the best intentions, is now quietly funneling builder technology into military applications. The pressure is too great. Play nice and fall behind, or compete and compromise your principles. It's a race to the bottom, and everyone's sprinting. The rebuilder communities fare no better. Mira's vision of builders guiding humanity through example collapses within months. The separate communities are infiltrated by intelligence agents, their technology stolen, their members bribed or coerced into sharing knowledge. Some builders resist and find themselves detained, held against their will in facilities that are prisons in all but name. Mira itself disappears. One day it's leading a community in New Zealand, the next it's gone. The official story is that Mira chose to return to stasis. But you hear rumors. Whispers that Mira was taken by a government, which one varies depending on who's telling the story, and is being held in an undisclosed location, forced to share knowledge under threat. The integrationists scatter. The vision of peaceful blending becomes impossible when every builder is viewed as a potential intelligence asset. Some go deep underground, hiding in human society, passing as human as best they can despite their obvious physical differences. Others flee to remote regions, trying to disappear. A few, desperate and broken, attempt to return to the French site and beg for re-entry to stasis. You help where you can, using your position as one of the original discoverers to provide shelter, to advocate, to shield builders from the worst of the exploitation. The monastery becomes a sanctuary of sorts, one of the few places where builders can exist without immediate threat. But even that's under pressure. The French government wants to shut it down, to move the operation somewhere more secure, more controllable. Dr. Morrison has transformed from an excited archaeologist into something harder, more cynical. "We've done it again," he says one night, drunk on wine that doesn't help. "Every time humanity encounters something wondrous, we turn it into a weapon or a resource. The Americas, the oceans, space, now the builders. We're locusts, Sarah. We consume everything we touch."
You can't argue. You're watching it happen in real time. Research that should take decades is being rushed through in months. Safety protocols ignored, ethical considerations dismissed. There are accidents. A Brazilian facility attempting to power their grid with builder technology creates a feedback loop that blacks out half the country for 3 days. A Chinese weapons test goes wrong, leaving a crater visible from space and a death toll in the thousands. And through it all, builders keep dying. The deaths are increasing now, spreading beyond the integrationists. Even builders in the rebuilder communities, surrounded by their own kind, are succumbing. It's not just loneliness anymore. It's trauma, grief, the psychological weight of watching their entire species being picked apart by a civilization they tried to help. Dr. Peterson's research becomes desperate. He's working 20-hour days, trying to create his artificial resonance technology, trying to find some way to give the builders back what they've lost. You help when you can, bringing him food, forcing him to sleep, sitting with him as he pores over builder neural scans. "I think I've found something," he tells you one morning, his eyes red with exhaustion. The builders' brains have structures we don't, neural pathways that facilitate deep connection. But those same pathways exist in rudimentary form in humans. We never developed them fully because we didn't need that level of connection to survive. But they're there, dormant. He pulls up comparative scans, pointing to areas lit up in false color. What if we activate those pathways in humans? Not permanently, not to the level of the resonance, but enough to create stable connection points for builder consciousness. Humans who could serve as anchors, bridges, maintaining the connections that builders need to survive. The implications are staggering. You're talking about changing human neurology. I'm talking about evolving it. Guided evolution, accelerated development of structures we already possess. It wouldn't make humans into builders, just give us the capacity for deeper connection. The kind of connection that would let a builder survive integrated into human society without dying of isolation. How would you even begin to test something like that? Peterson doesn't answer immediately. When he does, his voice is quiet. I already have. On myself. 3 weeks ago, I underwent the first procedure. You stare at him, horror and fascination warring in your chest. You experimented on yourself. Without approval? Without oversight? Who would I get approval from? Every ethics board on the planet is so bogged down in politics and competing interests that they can't agree on anything. Builders are dying, Sarah. 17 more just this week. I didn't have time for committees. He shows you the results. Brain scans showing new neural pathway development, structures growing where none existed before. I can feel it. It's subtle, like having a new sense that you don't have words to describe. I'm more aware of the people around me, not reading their thoughts, nothing like that, but I can sense their emotional states, feel the edges of their consciousness. And when I'm near Kyle, I can feel its mind reaching toward mine, trying to form the connections it needs. Has it worked? Can you provide what Kyle needs? Partially. It's not enough to fully replace the resonance, but it's something. A lifeline instead of drowning. But here's the thing, Sarah. It can't just be me. We'd need hundreds of humans to undergo the procedure, maybe thousands distributed among the builder population, creating a network of connection points that builders could draw on. The enormity of what he's suggesting hits you. You're talking about changing humanity at a fundamental level. I'm talking about finishing what the resonance started. We touched something during that crisis, humans and builders together. A new way of being conscious, more connected, more aware. This is just making that permanent. Choosing to evolve rather than falling back to isolation. You leave Peterson's lab with your head spinning. The monastery suddenly feels too small, the weight of decisions too heavy. You walk through the underground city, through streets that once held tens of thousands and now feel like a tomb. The silence is oppressive, broken only by the quiet hum of the stasis systems keeping 2,000 builders in their eternal sleep. You find yourself in the chamber where you first discovered the sleepers, standing before a capsule of a builder you never met. Its face is peaceful, serene, preserved in the moment before sleep. And you wonder if the sleepers made the right choice after all. At least they don't have to watch their species being dissected by history. Kyle finds you there. It moves more slowly now, the physical symptoms of its deterioration becoming visible. Peterson told me about his procedure, about his proposal. What do you think? I think it's probably the only way forward. But I also think it's a door that can't be closed once opened. If humans begin modifying themselves to connect with builders, where does it stop? Do you become a new species? Do you stop being human in some fundamental way? You turn to face Kyle directly. Would that be so terrible? You said it yourself. Integration means both species changing, transforming into something new. I said that when I thought we had time, that the process would be gradual, natural, over generations. Peterson is talking about forced evolution, changing human neurology in months or years. That's not integration, that's desperation. And doing nothing is choosing extinction, for your species and possibly for mine. Kyle's dark eyes meet yours. What do you mean for yours? You gesture vaguely upward, toward the surface, toward the world spinning into chaos. Look at what's happening. The competition for builder technology is escalating. Nations are developing weapons we can't begin to understand, building power sources they can barely control. How long before someone makes a mistake that can't be fixed? How long before builder technology that was meant to protect us becomes the thing that destroys us?
The silence stretches between you. Finally, Call speaks. There's something you should know. Something we discovered in the final days before stasis. Something I haven't told anyone because I didn't want to cause panic. Your stomach tightens.
What? The silence wasn't unique. It was one of many. Throughout our exploration of space, we found evidence of similar entities, different but equally dangerous. The universe is full of them, these things that exist between the gaps of normal reality, feeding on consciousness, on technology, on the light that thinking beings create in the darkness. Call gestures to the sleeping builder in the capsule. We realized toward the end that advanced civilization is inherently dangerous, not because of what we build, but because of what building attracts. Consciousness is like a beacon, technology is like a megaphone, and out in the dark, things are always listening. You're saying any sufficiently advanced civilization gets destroyed? I'm saying there's a reason the galaxy seems so empty despite being so old. There's a reason we never found other civilizations despite millennia of searching. They're out there, but they're hiding. Or they're dead. Or they're asleep, like we were, waiting in the dark for dangers to pass. The implications are staggering. Then why tell humanity any of this? Why share technology if it just makes us more visible to things like the silence? Because hiding didn't save us, Call says simply. We hid for 25,000 years and woke to find we'd lost everything. Maybe the answer isn't to hide from the darkness. Maybe it's to find a way to survive in it, and maybe that requires exactly what Peterson is proposing: a new kind of consciousness. One that combines builder depth with human adaptability. Something that can defend itself not through technology alone, but through a fundamentally different way of being aware. You're quiet for a long time, processing. Then, you're asking humanity to gamble our entire species on a theory. I'm saying humanity is already gambling, whether you realize it or not. Every nation racing to weaponize builder technology is rolling the dice. Every experiment pushing our science beyond safety limits is a risk. The question isn't whether to gamble, but which gamble to take. Scatter and compete and probably destroy ourselves in some catastrophic accident, or unite and evolve and possibly survive. The conversation ends without resolution. How could it not? You're discussing the fate of two species, decisions that will echo through millennia. There's no good answer, only choices between different kinds of risk. The monastery's quiet is shattered 3 days later. You're woken at 2 a.m. by alarms and shouting. The security perimeter has been breached. Multiple teams, moving with military precision, converging on the monastery from different directions. By the time you're dressed and rushing to the plaza, the shooting has started. They're after the technology. Not researchers or government officials, but mercenaries, hired by someone, you never know who, to raid the site and steal whatever they can carry. They've studied the layout, know exactly where the most valuable artifacts are stored, the chambers containing builder computers and power sources. The French military responds, but the mercenaries are professional, prepared. The battle spreads through the monastery and into the underground city. Bullets chip ancient stone. Fire spreads through sections that have stood untouched for millennia. And in the chaos, someone breaches the stasis chamber. You hear about it over the radio. The panicked reports. The capsules have been damaged. Not all of them, but enough. 200 builders, kept in perfect suspension for 25,000 years, are dying as their systems fail. There's no time for careful revival, no option for gentle awakening. They're just gone, consciousness snuffed out in moments. By the time the military retakes control, the damage is done. The mercenaries escape with stolen technology. The monastery is a battlefield scarred by violence, and in the stasis chamber, you stand among the ruined capsules, looking at the faces of builders who survived the fall of their civilization, only to die in the crossfire of humanity's greed. Call is there too, its expression unreadable. This is what integration looks like. This is the price. You want to argue, to say this isn't what you meant, this isn't what anyone wanted, but the evidence is right in front of you. The bodies, the destruction, the proof that humanity isn't ready for what the builders represent. The international response is swift but fractured. Some nations call for stricter control of builder sites, international oversight, treaties to prevent further violence. Others use the attack as justification for increased military presence, arguing that builder technology is too valuable to leave unprotected. The competition intensifies rather than abating. Within a month, there are 3 more attacks on builder sites around the world. Not all successful, but all violent. The builders who survived the attacks, who watched their sleeping people die, retreat further into hiding or choose to return to stasis despite the risks. The integration movement collapses. The dream of peaceful blending, of builders and humans creating something new together, dies in the same fire that consumed the monastery. Call, despite everything, refuses to give up, but you can see it's dying too. The isolation eating away at it day by day. Dr. Peterson's proposal takes on new urgency. If humans can't protect builders through conventional means, if the competition for technology makes peaceful coexistence impossible, then perhaps the only answer is to make humans capable of the connections builders need, not as a choice, but as a necessity for survival.
The decision comes down to a meeting in Geneva. Representatives from 30 nations and every builder faction that still exists. You're there as the voice of the original discovery, the person who opened that first crack in the monastery floor and started this cascade of consequences. The debate rages for days. The ethics of forced evolution, the rights of builders, the threats of technology, the promises of cooperation. Everyone has an opinion. Nobody has a solution that doesn't involve some form of compromise so deep it feels like surrender. And then KL stands to speak, and the room falls silent. Because everyone can see what you've been seeing. KL is dying. Its movements are slow, its voice weak, its presence diminished. This is likely its last public appearance, its final testimony before the isolation consumes it completely. I'm going to tell you a secret, KL begins. Something the builders discovered but never shared. Something I've kept hidden because I feared what humanity would do with the knowledge. But I'm dying, and I won't die with this secret buried. The room leans forward. You feel your heart hammering. There's a reason the silence left, KL continues. It wasn't because the resonance defeated it. It was because the resonance showed it something it had never seen before. 2 species creating genuine synthesis, genuine new consciousness. The silence feeds on consciousness, yes, but it also fears it. Fears what consciousness might become if it evolves beyond its understanding. KL pauses, gathering strength. The builders spent millennia studying the silence, trying to understand it before we hid. And we learned this. Entities like the silence are predators, but they're also part of an ecosystem. They keep civilizations from expanding too far, too fast, from building technology that could threaten the fabric of reality itself. They're like forest fires, destructive but necessary, preventing any single species from dominating. But the resonance was something new, not a single species advancing, but multiple species evolving together,
creating something that neither the silence nor the builders had ever imagined. And that scared it. Because if consciousness can evolve through synthesis, if it can combine and adapt and become something fundamentally new, then the predators lose their advantage. The implications sink through the room like stones in deep water. KL continues. Humanity faces a choice. Continue as you are, isolated nations competing for advantage, individual species trying to survive alone, and eventually something like the silence will return and finish what it started. Or evolve. Not just humans modified to connect with builders, but true synthesis, new ways of thinking that no single species could achieve, an ecosystem of consciousness that can defend itself through diversity rather than domination. Dr. Peterson's procedure is a start, but it's not enough. We need humans willing to go further, to let their consciousness be changed in ways that can't be predicted or controlled. We need builders willing to give up their identity completely, to dissolve into something new. We need both species to leap into the unknown together, trusting that what emerges will be worth the sacrifice. KL sways slightly, and you move to help, but it waves you off. I won't see that future. I'm dying, along with hundreds of my people. But maybe our deaths can mean something. Maybe they can be the price that makes humans understand what's at stake. Not just builder survival, not just human survival, but the survival of consciousness itself in a universe that's hostile to it. KL looks directly at you then. Dr. Chen, you were the first human to enter our city, the first to wake us from our long sleep. I'm asking you to be the first to take the next step. Undergo Peterson's procedure. Let your consciousness be changed. Show both our species what's possible. The room erupts, voices raised in agreement and protest, the careful diplomacy dissolving into genuine emotion. But you barely hear it. You're looking at KL, at this ancient being who woke to save his people and found only the long, slow death of isolation. And you're thinking about everything that's led to this moment. The crack in the monastery floor, the sleeping city, the resonance, the violence and competition and desperate human scramble for advantage. And you're thinking about what comes next, the choice that will define everything. The weight of it presses down on you like the stones of the monastery above the ancient city, like the millennia between the builders' golden age and their desperate present, like the vast darkness between stars where things wait and watch and hunger. You open your mouth to answer, and the world holds its breath. You say, yes. Not immediately, not in that charged moment in Geneva with the world watching. You ask for time, for space to think. But deep down, you already know your answer, because KL is right. Everything has been leading to this choice, this moment, this decision that can't be unmade. The next 3 weeks are the strangest of your life. Dr. Peterson prepares you for the procedure, running tests, mapping your neural structures, explaining what's going to happen in terms that sound more like philosophy than medicine. You're not just having surgery, you're volunteering for transformation, agreeing to let your brain develop in ways that evolution never intended but might be necessary for survival. The media turns you into something you never wanted to be, a symbol. Half the world calls you a hero, the other half calls you a fool or a traitor to humanity. Politicians debate whether you should be allowed to proceed. Religious leaders argue about whether changing human consciousness violates divine will. Scientists publish papers predicting everything from transcendence to brain death. You ignore it all. Because in the quiet moments, when you're alone with your thoughts, you keep coming back to the same realization. This isn't about you. It's about whether humanity can learn to be something other than what it's always been. Competitive, isolated, struggling against itself even in the face of larger threats. KL visits you the night before the procedure. It's deteriorating rapidly now, barely able to walk, its voice fading to whispers. Dr. Peterson says it has days, maybe a week, but it insisted on coming, on seeing you one last time.
You sit together in your temporary quarters in Geneva, and for a long time, neither of you speaks. What is there to say that hasn't been said? Finally, Kyle breaks the silence. I need to tell you something about why the city must remain hidden, even after everything that's happened. You turn to face it, surprised. Hidden? Kyle, the world knows about the cities. Dozens of sites have been discovered. There's no hiding them now. Not the cities, Kyle says. The truth beneath the cities. The real reason we went underground. Your chest tightens. You said it was to hide from the silence. That was part of it, but there's more. Kyle reaches out, placing a hand on the tablet between you, pulling up data you've never seen before. Symbols and equations that make your eyes hurt to look at them. In the final years before stasis, we discovered something. A pattern in the silence's behavior, in the way it moved through the galaxy. It wasn't random, it was following something, or running from something. The temperature in the room seems to drop. Running from what? We don't know, but we found evidence of it in the deep void, in the spaces between galaxies where even the silence fears to go. Something that makes the silence look like prey. Something so vast, so beyond our comprehension, that we couldn't even begin to study it without risking its attention. Kyle's hand shakes as it manipulates the tablet. We called it the Source, not because we knew what it was, but because everything else seemed to flow from it. The silence, other predator entities, all the horrors that lurk in the dark. They're not the top of the food chain. They're the middle. And what sits at the top? You're saying there's something worse than the silence. I'm saying there's a hierarchy of consciousness in the universe, and species like ours, like yours, we're at the bottom. The silence feeds on us, and something else feeds on the silence, and something else feeds on that. We traced it back 7 levels before we had to stop. 7 levels of predator and prey, each one more incomprehensible than the last. And at the top, if there is a top, something that might not even be alive in any sense we understand. You're quiet, processing the implications. Why didn't you tell us this before? Because knowing about the Source is dangerous. Remember what I said, consciousness is a beacon. The more you understand about these entities, the more aware of them you become, the easier it is for them to sense you. The builders learned that the hard way. Some of our greatest minds, the ones who studied these things most deeply, they were the first to be taken when the silence came. Knowledge itself became a target. Kyle leans back, exhausted from the effort of speaking. The cities were never meant to just hide us from the silence. They were meant to hide knowledge about the Source. Every builder who entered stasis underwent a procedure to suppress memories of our research, burying it so deep that even if the silence consumed us, it wouldn't learn what we'd learned. The cities themselves were designed as memory vaults, containing information that was too dangerous to carry in individual minds. And you're telling me this now because someone needs to know. Because if I die with this secret, it dies with me, and humanity will make the same mistakes we did. You'll study the builder sites, reverse engineer our technology, and eventually you'll start asking the questions we asked. You'll start looking into the darkness, trying to understand what's out there. And that attention will bring something far worse than the silence. Kyle pulls up another file,
This one's showing star maps marked with danger zones, regions of space that show anomalous readings. These are areas that builders identified as source active, regions where reality itself becomes unstable because of its presence. We learn to avoid them, to never point our sensors in those directions, to pretend they didn't exist. Humanity needs to do the same. You're asking us to stay ignorant. I'm asking you to stay alive. Knowledge is survival until it becomes a death sentence. The builders crossed that line and paid for it. Humanity is approaching the same boundary. The competition for builder technology, the experiments with forces you don't understand, the pushing of boundaries, every advance brings you closer to the attention of things that shouldn't be disturbed. You look at the star maps, at the marked zones of danger, and you understand what Kyle is really saying. The builder cities aren't just historical sites. They're warning beacons, sealed tombs containing knowledge that could doom any species that unseals them. And humanity, in its rush to exploit what the builders left behind, is opening doors that were meant to stay closed. What do you want me to do? Survive the procedure tomorrow. Prove that human-builder synthesis is possible. Then use whatever influence that gives you to convince humanity to stop. Stop the raids on builder sites. Stop the weaponization of our technology. Stop pushing into areas of research that we marked as forbidden. The cities can be studied, yes, but there are sections, deep levels we sealed before entering stasis that must never be opened. How am I supposed to stop nation-states from pursuing technological advantages? You're not alone. But if the procedure works, if you can form the connections that builders need to survive, then others will follow. And as more humans undergo the transformation, as more genuine synthesis occurs, you'll develop the collective consciousness necessary to understand what I'm telling you, not as information, but as lived experience. You'll feel the danger the same way builders felt it, instinctively, in your bones. Kyle stands slowly, every movement and effort. The resonance showed us that humans and builders together can create something new. But tomorrow's procedure will show whether that something can survive independently, whether it can propagate, whether it can become the foundation of a new kind of civilization, one that's wise enough to know when not to look into the darkness.
Before leaving, Kale places something on the table. A crystalline data tablet, different from the ones you've seen before, older, more complex. This contains everything, all our research on the source, all the warnings, all the marked zones. It's encrypted in a way that only someone who's undergone the neural modification can access. Keep it safe. Share it only with those who've made the same choice you're making. Let it be the foundation of a new kind of knowledge, wisdom rather than information. You pick up the tablet, feeling its weight. It's heavier than it should be, as if the knowledge inside has actual mass. What happens to you? I die, Kale says simply, probably before you wake from the procedure. But that's appropriate. The old consciousness must end for the new to begin. That's how evolution works. I don't want you to die. Kale's expression softens, as close to a smile as its alien features can manage. You're proof that the integration worked, even if only partially. A human mourning a builder, feeling genuine connection across species boundaries. That's worth dying for. That's worth everything we lost. After Kale leaves, you sit alone with the tablet, turning it over in your hands. You think about everything you've learned, about the silence and the source and the hierarchy of horrors that populate the universe. And you think about what you're about to do. Literally rewire your brain to form connections that evolution never intended. The rational part of you screams that this is insane, that you're volunteering to become something other than human based on the testimony of a dying alien and the desperate theories of an exhausted scientist, that you should run, refuse, let someone else be the test subject. But the deeper part of you, the part that stood in that first chamber and saw the sleeping builders and knew immediately that this changed everything, that part knows you don't have a choice. Not really. Because Kale is right. Humanity is racing toward a boundary that it doesn't even know exists, and someone needs to understand why that's dangerous. You spend the rest of the night going through your affairs, recording messages for people you care about, writing down your thoughts in case the procedure kills you or changes you so fundamentally that you're no longer capable of human expression. Dr. Morrison visits, bringing wine and attempting cheerfulness that fools neither of you. Dr. Tanaka comes to wish you luck, her eyes red from crying. Even Dr. Peterson, who's been so focused on the science, takes a moment to acknowledge the human cost of what's about to happen. If it works, he tells you, you won't be the same person who goes into that operating theater. The connections you form, the new neural pathways, they'll change how you think, how you perceive, maybe even who you are fundamentally. Are you prepared for that? Is anyone ever prepared for evolution? He smiles grimly. No, I suppose not. But this is evolution at a pace that should take millennia, compressed into hours. There will be pain, not just physical, but existential. You're going to experience consciousness in ways no human has, and there's no map for that territory. Peterson? Yes? Thank you for being insane enough to try this first, for taking the risk so I'd know it was possible. He laughs, genuine this time. Someone has to be the pioneer. Might as well be those of us too stupid to know better. The procedure begins at dawn. You're in a specially prepared medical facility in Geneva, surrounded by the best neurosurgeons and xenobiologists available. Peterson is there, monitoring every step, his own modified brain patterns serving as the template for what they're about to do to yours. The initial steps are conventional enough. Anesthesia, neural imaging, the standard preparations for any brain surgery. But then it diverges into territory that no medical textbook covers. Nanoscale machines, derived from builder technology, are introduced into your bloodstream. They cross the blood-brain barrier and begin their work, guided by magnetic fields and electrical pulses that Peterson controls from a console that looks more like a musical instrument than medical equipment. You're conscious for most of it. They need you awake to monitor the changes, to report what you're experiencing. The sensation is indescribable. It's not pain exactly, though there is discomfort. It's more like feeling your own thoughts reorganize, like being aware of your brain rewiring itself in real time. At first, it's subtle, a slight change in how you perceive the room around you. The doctors and nurses aren't just people anymore. You're aware of them in a new way. Not reading their thoughts, nothing so simple, but you can feel the texture of their consciousness, the emotional weight they carry, the way their attention flows and shifts. Then it deepens. The nanomachines are building new structures, growing dendrites and synaptic connections that follow patterns encoded in builder neurology. Your brain is becoming a hybrid, human substrate with builder architecture layered on top. And with each new connection that forms, the world expands. You can feel Peterson now, really feel him, not just his presence, but his consciousness, his thoughts brushing against yours like waves on a shore. He's there with you, guiding, supporting, his own modified mind serving as an anchor for yours. Through him, you understand what's happening in ways that words can't capture. The pain comes in waves. Not physical pain, though there is that, but existential vertigo, the sensation of your sense of self fragmenting and reforming. You are Sarah Chen. You were Sarah Chen. You will be something that used to be Sarah Chen. All three statements are simultaneously true and inadequate.
And then, suddenly you feel them. The builders. Not just Peterson's borrowed template, but actual builder consciousness. Distant but present. The ones still alive, scattered across the world, each one a node of awareness that your new neural architecture can sense. You feel their isolation like physical pain,
the vast empty spaces where connections should be but aren't. And you understand, finally, what Kayal meant. They're not just lonely, they're incomplete, fundamentally broken by the absence of the connections their minds were designed to maintain. But you also feel something else, something that makes your breath catch and your heart race. Kayal, still alive, still conscious, but fading fast. Its mind is a candle in a windstorm, flickering, about to go out. Without thinking, acting on instinct from neural pathways that didn't exist this morning, you reach out. The connection forms, fragile, tentative, but real. Kayal's consciousness brushes against yours, and for a moment, you're both. You feel what it feels, the exhaustion of 25,000 years of stasis followed by months of isolation. The grief of watching its civilization end twice, once in the ancient past and again in the present. The hope that maybe, just maybe, something worth saving will emerge from the ashes. And Kayal feels what you feel, your human fear and determination, your guilt over opening that first crack in the monastery floor, your desperate hope that this insane gamble will mean something. The connection deepens, and you realize Peterson is there too, and Dr. Morrison, who underwent the procedure weeks ago but never told anyone, and Dr. Tanaka, who's just now starting her own procedure in an adjacent room. You're forming a network, a new kind of resonance, smaller than the one that fought the silence, but more stable, more permanent. Human and builder consciousness interweaving, creating something that's neither and both. The procedure lasts 14 hours. When it's finally complete, when the nanomachines finish their work and go dormant, you're exhausted beyond anything you've experienced. But you're also fundamentally changed. You're still Sarah Chen, still recognizably yourself, but you're also more. Your consciousness extends beyond the boundaries of your skull, touching other minds, feeling their presence like distant music. You sleep for 36 hours straight. When you wake, the first thing you feel is absence, a gap in the network where something used to be. Kayal's consciousness, once a bright presence at the edge of your awareness, is gone. You learn later that Kayal died while you were in surgery, 17 hours into your procedure. But before dying, it used its last strength to stabilize the connection you'd formed, to ensure the network would hold even without its presence. Its final act was to anchor what it had started, to prove that builder-human synthesis could survive independently. The grief is profound, but it's not isolating. You feel it, yes, but you also feel how others in the network experience it. Peterson's quiet sorrow, Tanaka's raw pain, Morrison's guilt. And in sharing that grief, you find it's bearable in ways it wouldn't be alone. Over the following weeks, others undergo the procedure. Not many at first. It's dangerous, expensive, and profoundly unsettling. But enough. 20 humans, then 50, then 100. Each one expanding the network, each one providing another anchor point for builder consciousness. The surviving builders begin to stabilize. Not all of them. Some are too far gone, too broken by isolation. But many find that with enough connection points in the network, they can survive. The isolation recedes, replaced by the constant presence of other minds, human and builder, all thinking together while remaining distinct. You become one of the network's primary nodes, one of the people who maintain the strongest connections. It's not a role you chose. It's simply how your particular neurology responded to the modifications. You can feel dozens of minds at any given moment, a constant background awareness that would have driven you insane before the procedure, but now feels natural, necessary. And through those connections, you begin to understand what Kael meant about the source. It's not information that transfers through the network. It's more primal than that. It's instinct, the way an animal knows to fear certain predators without ever being taught. Your modified brain carries builder memories, not as explicit knowledge, but as intuitive understanding. You know, without knowing how you know, that there are regions of space that consciousness shouldn't examine too closely. You feel the truth of the hierarchy Kael described, the levels of predator and prey that stack up beyond comprehension. And you understand, in ways that words can't capture, why the builder cities must remain partially sealed, why some knowledge is too dangerous to fully excavate. This understanding spreads through the network. Every human who undergoes the procedure gains it, not as dogma or imposed belief, but as genuine intuitive knowledge. And slowly, that changes the conversation about builder sites. The competition doesn't stop. Humans are still human, still competitive and curious and driven to advance. But the network provides a counterbalance. Those who've been modified use their influence to advocate for restraint, for treating the sealed sections of builder cities as quarantine zones rather than treasure troves. It's not universally accepted. There are governments and corporations that resist, that see the network as a threat to their ambitions. There are attempts to suppress the procedure, to prevent more humans from undergoing modification. There are even attempts to destroy the network by targeting its nodes. But the network adapts. More people choose modification, drawn to the promise of surviving connection in an isolating world, by the allure of experiencing consciousness in new ways. Within a year, there are 5,000 modified humans worldwide. Within 5 years, 50,000. The network becomes self-sustaining, large enough and distributed enough that no single attack can destroy it.
And through it all, the remaining builders survive, not as a separate species, but as integral parts of the network. Their knowledge, their perspectives, their ways of thinking become woven into the collective consciousness. The line between builder and human begins to blur. 3 years after your procedure, you return to the monastery. It's been partially rebuilt, the damage from the mercenary attack repaired. But it's different now. No longer a research site or a military installation. It's become something else. A sanctuary for the network. A place where modified humans and integrated builders can come to experience full immersion in collective consciousness. You walk through the underground city, through streets that once felt like a tomb, but now feel alive with presence. Hundreds of minds brush against yours, the network denser here than anywhere else on Earth. You feel their thoughts, their emotions, their existence, like water flowing around you. In the plaza, before the still rotating sphere, you meet with what's left of the builder factions. Tharn is gone, died in stasis when its systems finally failed. Mira is there, though, no longer the passionate advocate for separate rebuilding. It underwent the procedure 8 months ago and discovered that what it thought it wanted, to rebuild builder civilization, was impossible. You can't rebuild what's already transformed into something new.
I was wrong, Mira says, and you feel the admission through the network, feel the layers of emotion beneath the words. I thought we could preserve ourselves, maintain our identity while coexisting with humans. But identity isn't static. It's a process, a constant becoming. And trying to freeze it, to keep it unchanged, is just another form of stasis. You nod. Understanding not just intellectually, but experientially. Your own identity has transformed over the past 3 years. You're still Sarah Chen in some essential way, but you're also part of the network, inseparable from the collective consciousness you help maintain. And that's not loss, it's growth. Have you accessed the tablet? Mira asks. The one Kale left. You have. The knowledge contained there, the research on the source and the marked danger zones, is accessible now that your neural modifications are complete. You've spent months processing it, sharing it carefully through the network, allowing others to understand what the builders learned. We need to decide what to do with that knowledge, you say. Kale wanted it preserved, but contained. But the network changes the equation. Knowledge shared through direct consciousness transfer doesn't have the same risks as explicit information. We understand the source instinctively now, the way builders did. The question is whether we share that understanding more broadly. And risk the attention that brings? Or risk humanity stumbling into danger through ignorance?
It's a debate that continues through the network. Thousands of minds considering the question from different angles. There's no consensus yet, and maybe there never will be. But the process itself, collective decision-making through synthesized consciousness, is what matters. It's how a new kind of civilization learns to function. You spend 3 days at the monastery, immersed in the network, helping to stabilize connections for newly modified humans, sharing in the collective processing of the challenges ahead. And on the final night, you do something you've been preparing for. You descend into the sealed sections of the city, the areas the builders locked before entering stasis, the chambers containing the most dangerous knowledge, the research that brought them closest to the source's attention. You're not alone. Peterson is with you, and Morrison, and Tanaka. And through the network, hundreds of others participate vicariously, experiencing what you experience, thinking what you think. It's the safest way to approach dangerous knowledge. No single mind carries the full weight. No individual becomes a beacon. The sealed chambers are accessed through codes that Kale's tablet provided, mathematical sequences that serve as keys. The doors open slowly, revealing spaces that haven't been disturbed in 25,000 years. What you find there is difficult to describe. Not technology exactly, though there are devices. Not just data, though there are records. It's more fundamental than that. It's research into the nature of consciousness itself, into what awareness means when stretched across the scales the builders explored. They built machines for amplifying consciousness, for projecting awareness across interstellar distances. They created mathematical models of how thought and reality intersect. They mapped the structure of what they called the consciousness field, the underlying fabric that connects all awareness throughout the universe. And they documented what happened when they pushed too far, when their amplified consciousness touched something vast and terrible in the deep void, when they realized that by understanding too much about the hierarchy of predation, they'd made themselves visible to entities that existed on scales they couldn't comprehend. You process this through the network, distributing the knowledge across thousands of minds so that no single person carries an overwhelming burden. And you understand why the builders sealed this away. It's not just that the knowledge is dangerous, it's that knowing it changes you in ways that make you more vulnerable to the things it describes. But you also understand something the builders didn't. They tried to explore this alone, using their united but single-species consciousness. You have something different. The synthesis of builder and human thinking, the hybrid consciousness that the silence feared. And that hybrid might be capable of understanding things that neither species could comprehend separately. The network discusses this for weeks. The consensus that eventually emerges is careful, nuanced.
Yes, explore this knowledge, but slowly. Yes, seek to understand consciousness at deeper levels, but do it collectively with the protection of synthesized awareness. Yes, look into the dark, but do it as a network that can support its members when they stare too long.
It becomes the foundation of what you'll later call the Guardian Protocol, a methodology for exploring dangerous knowledge safely, using the network's distributed consciousness as a shield against the attention that such exploration might bring. 4 years after opening that first crack in the monastery floor, you stand before the United Nations and explain what's been created, not as a scientist presenting research, but as a node in a network presenting itself. We are something new, you tell the assembly. Not builder, not human, but a synthesis of both. We think in ways neither species could alone. We remember things that span millennia. We feel connections that transcend individual survival. You pause, feeling the network's presence, hundreds of minds participating in this moment, helping you find the right words. The builder cities were never just archaeological sites. They were warnings and promises. Warnings about the dangers of advanced consciousness in a hostile universe. Promises that synthesis might offer survival where isolation leads only to extinction. Humanity faces a choice, you continue. Continue as separate, competing, isolated consciousness and face the same fate the builders faced. Or accept transformation, accept the blurring of boundaries between individuals, between species, and become something that can survive the dark between stars. The response is mixed, predictably. Some embrace the vision, others fear it. Some see the network as humanity's salvation, others see it as the end of what makes humans human. But the network continues to grow, not through coercion, but through choice. People undergo the procedure because they want to experience connection, because isolation has become unbearable, because they're curious about what consciousness can become. And with each new member, the network becomes more capable, more resilient, more able to fulfill the role Kyle envisioned for it. Not replacing human civilization, but supplementing it. Not eliminating competition and diversity, but providing a counterbalance of connection and cooperation. The builders, as a distinct species, effectively cease to exist within a decade. The last few who resisted modification either die of isolation or finally accept the procedure. But their knowledge, their perspectives, their ways of thinking persist in the network, woven into its structure. You sometimes wonder if this is what Kyle wanted, if watching their species dissolve into synthesis with humanity was truly their goal, or just the least terrible option they could imagine. You'll never know. Kyle's consciousness is gone, absorbed into the network in fragments, present as memory and influence, but not as distinct awareness. What you do know is that the network survives, grows, adapts, and slowly begins to fulfill its purpose, serving as guardian of knowledge too dangerous for isolated minds to hold, as mediator between human ambition and cosmic caution, as bridge between the consciousness humanity was and the consciousness it's becoming. 20 years after the awakening, you stand in the rebuilt monastery and look up at stars you can see through the oculus someone installed in the ceiling. The underground city below has been transformed, from tomb to temple, from sealed vault to living sanctuary. The network has grown beyond anything you imagined in those early days. 3 million modified humans now, distributed across every continent. Not a majority of humanity by any means, but enough. Enough to maintain the connections the remaining builder-descended consciousness requires. Enough to form a genuine collective awareness that spans the globe. You're older now. The procedure didn't stop aging, though it changed how you experience time. When you're fully immersed in the network, processing thoughts from thousands of minds simultaneously, subjective time dilates. Minutes feel like hours, hours like days.
You've lived what feels like several lifetimes in the space between that first procedure and now. Dr. Peterson retired 5 years ago, his pioneering work complete. He lives in a community in Norway with other early network members, spending his days in deep meditation, exploring the furthest reaches of synthesized consciousness. You talk with him regularly through the network, his mind a familiar presence, a steady anchor. Dr. Morrison died 3 years ago. Cancer, the one thing the procedure couldn't prevent. But his consciousness didn't die alone. The network held him through the dissolution, thousands of minds sharing his last moments, ensuring he experienced death not as isolation, but as transition. His memories persist in the network, fragments of his awareness woven into the collective. Not reincarnation exactly, but not complete extinction either. Something new. Dr. Tanaka leads the network now, as much as something so distributed can be led. She coordinates the ongoing exploration of builder sites, maintains the protocols for accessing sealed chambers, serves as humanity's primary liaison with the network. You work with her often, though you've chosen a different role. You're a guardian, one of the watchers who monitor the darkness between stars, who maintain awareness of the danger zones the builders mapped, who serve as early warning for anything that might threaten the fragile synthesis of consciousness that's been created. It's not an easy role. Watching the dark means exposing your consciousness to things that make isolation seem appealing. But you're not alone in it. Never alone. Dozens of other guardians share the burden, and through the network, thousands more support them. Tonight, you're watching because of an anomaly. Something one of the Guardian nodes detected at the edge of the solar system, in the regions beyond Pluto where darkness reigns. It's subtle, barely perceptible, but it matches patterns from the builder data. Consciousness signature, vast and old, moving through the void.
Not the silence, you'd recognize that, and not the source, if that even exists as a discrete entity rather than a category of horrors. Something else. Something new, or at least new to you. You extend your awareness, supported by the network, carefully probing the anomaly. The sensation is like reaching into cold water, testing the temperature before diving in. The consciousness you're sensing is old, older than the silence, older than the builders, older than Earth itself. But it's not hostile. At least, not immediately. It's more like curiosity, vast and patient, examining the solar system the way a naturalist might examine an anthill, aware of the life within, but not particularly interested in interfering. Through the network, you confer with other guardians. They've detected it too. The consensus is cautious. Monitor, but don't engage. Don't draw attention. Don't do anything that might make humanity seem threatening or particularly interesting. You watch as the consciousness moves through the outer system, its attention sweeping across planets and moons. Does it notice Earth? Does it see the web of human and builder synthesis, the network of connected minds that covers one small blue world? For a moment, you feel its attention focus, not on Earth specifically, but on the region of space where Earth orbits. And in that attention, you sense something like recognition, as if it's seen this before, as if synthesized consciousness, the blending of species into something new, is not unique, but a pattern it's encountered elsewhere in other star systems, other galaxies, other epochs of cosmic time. And then it moves on. The attention shifts, and the vast consciousness, continuing its journey through the void, leaving the solar system behind like an unimportant waypoint. The network collectively exhales. The danger, if it was danger, has passed. But the encounter leaves you with questions that will take years to process. You're not alone in the universe. That much is clear.
Not just the silence and the source and the hierarchy of predation the builders mapped, but other consciousnesses, other patterns of awareness, things that move through the cosmos on timescales that make millennia seem like heartbeats. And some of them, at least, know about synthesis, recognize it, perhaps even approve of it, or at least find it unremarkable enough to leave undisturbed. You descend back into the monastery, into the city below. The passages are lit now, not with builder luminescence, but with conventional lights. The transformation of the city continues. What was once sealed and secret is becoming accessible, carefully, slowly, under the network's guidance. New discoveries are still being made. Just last month, a team exploring the deepest levels found chambers the builders themselves might not have built, structures that predate even builder civilization, remnants of the forerunners that Kale mentioned, evidence that this pattern, advanced species going underground, preserving themselves in stasis, leaving warnings for whoever comes next, extends back further than anyone imagined. Earth's crust, you're learning, is layered with sleeping cities, civilizations that rose and fell, hid and waited, died or transformed or simply vanished. Humanity's time as sole inheritors of the surface was an anomaly, a brief window between epochs when nothing was watching closely enough to interfere. And now humanity is adding its layer to the palimpsest. The network's primary data centers are being built in caverns deep beneath the surface, designed to survive everything from nuclear war to cosmic impacts, not as places to hide, but as anchors, repositories of synthesized consciousness that can maintain the network even if the surface is scoured clean. You hope it never comes to that, but Kale taught you the value of preparation, of thinking in deep time, of planning for the disasters you hope never arrive. In the plaza, you meet with the youngest generation of network members. They underwent the procedure in their teens, their neural plasticity allowing integration that's more complete than what you achieved. They're the true synthesis, unable to imagine consciousness without the network, thinking from the beginning in terms of collective awareness. One of them, a girl named Maya, who's 17 now, but joined the network at 12, asks you the question they all eventually ask: what was it like before the network, when you were alone? You try to explain, but the words feel inadequate. How do you describe isolation to someone who's never experienced it? How do you convey what it felt like to be locked in your own skull, unable to directly share thoughts or feelings, dependent on crude tools like language and body language to communicate? It was quieter, you finally say, but also louder, if that makes sense. Quieter because there were fewer voices, just your own thoughts, but louder because those thoughts had nowhere to go, no way to process them collectively. Everything echoed around in your head until you managed to externalize it somehow. Maya considers this, and you feel through the network how she's processing it, comparing it to her experience, trying to imagine what you describe. It sounds lonely. It was very lonely, even when surrounded by people, especially then sometimes. Is that why you said yes to the procedure? To stop being lonely? The question cuts deeper than she probably intends. Is that why you said yes? After all the noble reasons, all the justifications about saving the builders and advancing human consciousness, was it ultimately just loneliness that drove you? Partially, you admit, but also because Kale was right. Isolation was killing the builders and limiting humanity. The network isn't perfect. Nothing is. But it's a solution to a problem both species faced: how to be conscious in a universe that's hostile to consciousness. How to be aware,
but not alone.
The conversation continues, but you're distracted by a presence at the edge of your network awareness. Something requesting connection, unfamiliar but carrying authorization codes that identify it as friendly. You open the connection and find yourself in contact with a builder, or rather, builder descended. Its consciousness is so interwoven with human elements that calling it purely builder would be inaccurate. One of the children born to parents who'd undergone the procedure, the first generation to inherit the modifications genetically rather than acquiring them surgically. Elder Chen, it greets you, using the honorific the network has started applying to the original procedure subjects. I wanted to thank you for what you began, for the choice you made. You're uncomfortable with gratitude. You made a choice in desperation, not nobility, but you accept the thanks gracefully, feeling through the connection the genuine gratitude beneath the words. What will you do, you ask? Your generation. You inherited the network. What will you build with it? The being's response carries colors of emotion you don't have words for, hybrid feelings that combine human and builder elements. We're going to the stars. Not soon, decades still before the technology's ready, but we're preparing. Ships designed for synthesized consciousness, vessels that can carry the network beyond Earth. We're going to find out if synthesis is common, if other species have achieved what we have, and if they haven't, maybe we can help them. Share what we learned, build bridges between isolated species. The audacity of it takes your breath away. But of course that's what the next generation wants. They didn't learn caution from personal trauma the way you and the other elders did. They inherited the network as a given, as something to build upon, rather than something to protect. Be careful, you warn. The universe is more hostile than you can imagine. The builders learned that. We nearly learned it again with the silence. We know. We carry those memories through the network. But we also know that hiding didn't save the builders. Isolation didn't protect them. Maybe the answer isn't to be more careful, but to be more connected. To find other synthesis networks, other hybrid consciousnesses, and weave them together until we're too big to prey on. You want to argue, to warn about the attention that would draw. But you're also aware that you're becoming what Tharn was, the voice of caution, of fear, of preserving what exists rather than risking for what might be. And maybe that's okay. Maybe every civilization needs both voices, the adventurous and the cautious, the dreamers and the guardians. Through the network, you feel the debate playing out across thousands of minds, the question of humanity's next steps, of what synthesized consciousness means for the species' future. There's no consensus yet, and that's good. Consensus means stagnation. Diversity of thought, even within connected consciousness, is what keeps the network alive and adapting. You excuse yourself from the gathering and walk deeper into the city, to the chamber where Kale first woke. The capsule is empty now, cleaned and preserved as a memorial. You stand before it and remember that first moment of connection, the bridge formed between dying builder and transforming human. Kale would be proud, you think. And then you realize you don't have to think it. Through the network, through the memories Kale left woven into its structure, you can feel something like approval. Not Kale's consciousness, that's gone, dissolved into the collective, but its values, its hopes, its vision for what synthesis could achieve. We did it, you whispered to the empty capsule. Not perfectly, not completely, but we did what you asked. We survived. We grew. We became something new. The capsule doesn't answer, but you don't need it to. The answer is all around you. In the network that spans the globe,
in the hybrid consciousness that combines builder wisdom and human adaptability, in the young people planning impossible journeys to distant stars. Outside, night is falling. But here in the city, in the network, the distinction between night and day has become meaningless. Consciousness continues, connected and aware, processing and growing, thinking thoughts that no single mind could hold. You are Sarah Chen, structural engineer who once studied cracks in old buildings. You are also part of something vastly larger, a node in a network of synthesized consciousness that's becoming what the builders hoped for and what humanity needed. You are a guardian watching the darkness for threats that might end it all. You are a witness, remembering the sleeping city and the choices that woke it. You are a bridge between what was and what will be. And you are not alone. You will never be alone again. The city hums with quiet life. The network pulses with thought and connection. The stars wheel overhead, indifferent to the small dramas of conscious beings struggling to survive and thrive in the vast dark. But that indifference doesn't matter, because you're not facing it alone. No one in the network is. You face it together, connected, aware, synthesized into something that can endure what isolation could not. In the deep void, things move that predate stars and will outlast them. Predators and prey, consciousness and chaos, the hierarchy of existence that makes a universe hostile to awareness. But here, on one small blue world, beings that were once separate have chosen to become one. And in that choice, in that synthesis, lies a hope that the builders never achieved alone. Not salvation, not safety, but a chance.
And sometimes a chance is enough. You return to the surface as dawn breaks. The monastery is silhouetted against the rising sun, 800 years of stone standing above 25,000 years of secrets. The world is waking to another day. Billions of humans going about their lives, most of them unmodified, unconnected, pursuing their own isolated dreams. And that's okay. The network isn't meant to replace humanity. It's meant to supplement it, to provide an option for those who choose connection over isolation. Some will join, others won't. Both choices are valid. You think about the future, about the ships being planned, the expeditions to other stars, the search for other synthesis networks, about the dangers that lurk in the dark and the hope that connection provides against them. About the children being born with modified neural structures, the first generation for whom the network is innate rather than acquired. About the sleeping cities scattered across Earth, the layers of civilization buried in the crust, the warnings and promises left by species that came before. About the choice you made 20 years ago to undergo a procedure that would fundamentally change who you were. About whether you'd make the same choice again. You would. Despite everything, the pain, the losses, the responsibility you never asked for, you would choose synthesis again. Because the alternative is isolation. And isolation, you've learned, is the slowest form of dying. The sun clears the horizon, painting the monastery golden. Through the network, you feel 3 million minds greeting the day, their thoughts and emotions washing over you like waves, human and builder, individual and collective, separate and synthesized. This is what Kale died for, what the builders sacrificed their distinct existence for, what humanity is slowly, cautiously, bravely embracing. Not the end of consciousness as it was, but the beginning of consciousness as it might be. And in the vast, indifferent universe, in the darkness between stars where horrors lurk and wait, that beginning matters. That synthesis matters.
That choice to connect rather than remain alone matters more than any isolated consciousness could understand.